Minor Duncan, if you'd lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. Please join me in saluting the emblem of the greatest country in the world. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome to our special board meeting. We mostly have discussion items on this agenda, and we have a couple requests to speak which have to do with items that are later on down the list. So I'm going to take the liberty of saying that if you'd like to speak, you're going to wait till we're discussing those items, I'm assuming. Okay, so these public comments we'll hold off on. And these are just discussion items, and I do believe that we probably need to come to some consensus on what we feel would move these items onto an agenda for further action, or if we feel that as we discuss each one, we'll determine whether or not that's going to happen. This is a first for us, so I'm not sure what the process will look like and where it'll go, but no action will be taken, except maybe to make this an action item, I guess is my sense of this, the possibilities out of these items. So on that note, I guess we'll start with item 1, which has to do with videotaping of board meetings. And as a board member, you have in front of you some information that the district put together, the pros and cons of it, some of the costs, some things to consider about what this would entail.
Can we mention to the gathered group that we haven't seen this before, so we'll take a few minutes to read it.
Yes, and just another note, we do have legal counsel here. Karen Myers with Orange County Department of Ed is here also.
We didn't. Janet's not here. Janet's not here.
I kept looking and reading and
Thinking Janet's here now.
That was in there a few minutes ago.
All of it. No brainer, it's a piece of cake, yeah. And she asked how many per store, I assume she was on the future, she was asking, come to your store, they're all stored.
It's only been a few months.
Yeah, well, you can buy it, terribly, I can serve her for, not serve her, but her for a few $100 that would
I
save.
guess we've begun our discussion,
Yeah,
so
sorry.
maybe we should lead into it.
Yeah, we probably should be with her.
Anyways, I think, Beth, you were the one that brought this up. Maybe you want to lead into this?
I'll defer to Chris. He said he was ready to start with something.
I don't. For me, this is a really simple and obvious thing to do. I think for me, the main reason is transparency of government, and but also just as a matter of convenience. You know, we are a district that's committed to technology, and to provide people an ability to watch live or at their convenience a video recorded session of the board will allow them to be more tuned in to what we do here, the expenses, the policies. It will allow the voters to hold us accountable in whatever areas are most important to them. You know, one politically oriented body has an interest in videoing all of these meetings, and they, frankly, in my opinion, perform the service of posting the unedited, uncut, beginning to end video online. But if anybody else chose to download pieces of that and present it in any manner they wish, they would be able to do that. I think the costs that are presented here are really higher than need to be presented. I don't know if any, who has or who has not watched the high definition video that this gentleman's camera takes, Tyler's camera takes, that goes on Fullerton's Future. But you can buy a very high quality, high definition camera for $1,200 or $1,500. To me, the bigger, I think the only goal really needs to be that you can tell who's speaking. You can generally tell who's speaking. That it's of a high enough quality that if it shows video words on the screen, that it can be discerned. The more important issue, frankly, is sound. So that as you're seeing, you can see that Bev is speaking, but you really want to hear what Bev is saying.
Maybe.
Maybe. And, the city goes to the extent of the agenda is tied to I believe you can click on agenda items and zoom straight to that piece of the video. I don't think that's necessary. I mean, it'd be great. I can't imagine that we couldn't. I would think that we could get, 8th grade technology students to do this. I would think they would want to have a turn to it. So, in my mind, we have a student or, whoever one of our least expensive employees are, or maybe we hire somebody for the sole purpose. All you got to do is sit there and turn the little thing at whoever's speaking, and maybe the greatest expense is we wire maybe a couple of $200 or $300 microphones so that everybody's picked up. But I think it's a great, and I appreciate, there's a little bit of angst that the video is not in this body's control, but yet we are legally obligated to allow anybody who wishes to sit here and video us. And they still can, even if we're videoing it, they still can. But I don't think they will. I mean, I think if what everybody's saying is recorded competently for a couple $1,000 upfront expense and maybe $50 or $100 of expense if we have to pay somebody per meeting, it makes us a much more transparent.
Oh, per meeting plus the time to upload it.
That is literally, you plug it into a computer, you hit a button, you walk away, 3 hours later, it's on the site, and at most, you cut off the wasted jabbering before the meeting, and if somebody forgot to turn the thing off after you close the meeting, and that's it. It's just, somebody sits there and whoever's talking is recorded, all the sound's recorded. You plug it in, you know, the website would be set up to receive it, that's easy. You upload it and you're done. It's nothing, it's a piece of cake. And we can also, now there may be some expense if we put it on Ustream or something, which I think would be great. I don't think we should go to the expense of putting it on television yet. I think we should see if we have good numbers on Ustream, which is free. In fact, we could have a free account. You could have a live link on the website. Meeting starts. Somebody wants to watch it live, they can watch it live. If they want to play it later, they play it later. Very, very inexpensive. But we do need a decent $2,000 you do want a high definition camera.
I think that, bringing up the fact that having other people tape it other than a professional is worth looking at. I don't think any of us are looking for something real high quality, but I do know that the integrity of the district is part of this. So we don't want to do anything low budget or what have you. But, looking outside of our district, Troy High School has a tech program where all those kids have to do an internship before they graduate from their senior year. This might be a collaboration that we can help them, and they can help us at the same time for, at least a test or a trial period. I mean, that we can consider something like that. Those are high school kids, so they would have, I think, a little bit more maturity.
You could even do things like, you set the camera up, and if the superintendent wanted to, or maybe he wanted to have Kathy do a 3-minute summary of the meeting. These were the highlights, this is what was brought up, these were the votes, and you can maybe do that sometimes, or maybe not do it sometimes, or if something was of particular importance. Or you could, if Hilda wanted to put in the front of it, or also put on there a little comment about an upcoming fundraiser or something like that. You can do that.
Commercials at the end.
Yeah, you could. Seriously, you could. You could brag. I think as long as you're putting the real content of the meeting, beginning to end, I think editorializing is fine. But putting the meeting up is nothing. I can't believe it would be as easy.
And I do think I think echoing on your transparency thing, I don't like the idea of videotaping these meetings just because I personally don't like to be on them. But the transparency piece of that and having people have the ability to go on and see a board meeting, because a lot of times, looking at our staff are out there and they'll hear something that happened at a board meeting, but they won't know exactly what happened at the board meeting. So a lot of times rumors go out there and things that were said maybe differently or the inflection of what was said. You read a minute, the minutes don't talk about a discussion, they don't talk about the flavor of what happened at a meeting. And as staff are becoming interested in what's going on in our board meetings, it's also an opportunity for them to stay involved and to see what's really going on, as opposed to just hearing something. It's better to see that in live. And if you can't always be here, then this is an opportunity to go onto our own website, be able to access it when you want to, and then be able to see what you want to see.
My question to the board would be, if it were free, is there anybody here that wouldn't want it?
I think that we've not really heard any cons, and I'd like to ask the chair to have this agendized for a vote at our future meeting, so that we can vote on doing this. Yes.
I actually just wanted to just make a note of one issue that you should probably make sure that's been researched before you decide, just in terms of putting something on your website. I believe it would need to be ADA compliant, so I'm thinking that probably any audio would have to be transcribed, because once you're a government website, then it needs to be ADA compliant, I believe. And I want to do some research on that, but I don't know the cost attached to that. So just something just to be aware of, to research, before you take your action.
Unless we have somebody during the course of the meeting doing.
If someone was signing and that was visible on the video, that might be a way, but I actually don't know. There's regulations about how to make it compliant. Universally accessible is the language, and I don't know those regulations offhand.
Our meetings aren't?
But you're putting it on your website by putting, but if you had someone who requested that this meeting be signed, we would have a signer here. This meeting is accessible, and by the same token, anything you put on your website needs to be accessible.
I know that MAC is doing a lot of stuff now for accessibility, and they may actually provide the service that we need. When you look into it, could you also look
No,
into
you're
it?
not, she's not looking into it. Those are things she's recommending we look into.
But she's looking into the legal.
Right, I
Oh.
can look into the legal aspect of it, but in
Of
terms
whether
of
the
the
MAC
costs and.
accessibility piece will work with it. But,
So any of our websites that we have out there that might have a little video on them or something?
Again,
Could potentially
I would
flag.
want to research it, but my understanding is that your website needs to be accessible.
So we might be out of compliance.
And I don't know your website, so
If we have
I
videos.
don't, you know, it may be, it may be that the fact that our meetings are ADA accessible, somebody, you know, I've never seen anybody forced to make a website. I mean, I guess if that were considered to be the main access, you know, there's no point in debating it. I'm skeptical that that's a problem, only because our city does it, and most cities do it, and I'm pretty sure the cities is not subtitled.
it may be, I mean, I just don't know.
It's
I just think
worthwhile.
it's something that should be investigated
Sure,
before you make
sure.
your decision, and then realize, oh, you made this decision, and that's a lot more expensive
Right,
than you
right.
thought.
I would like, in my suggestion, I'd like to follow the recommendation that we received from staff about trying this for 6 months. If that could be part of the, what's brought back, the action that's brought back to the board. Of course, we could change it if we wanted. And,
By trying for 6 months, are you saying using a professional videographer or us doing it ourselves?
I think that would be the discussion if we bring it back.
But I think we need a lot more information before we just jump into it for 6 months. I fully support the filming and broadcasting. I think the last 2 bullets are really critical that you put here. It provides accessibility and transparency, and I like the fact that the district controls what's posted. I'm a little concerned with the cost. I'd like to see us go a little bit more in depth and looking into some other alternatives. And I feel it needs to be an independent contractor. And I think if we're gonna do it, I think we should do it well. It shouldn't just be kids coming in and doing it as a project. If we're gonna do it, I'd like to see it done well. I'm a little concerned with the budget. I'd like to see the 3rd interim and see what happens in January before we put some money behind this. And I think maybe all the study could be done for us and find out where we are. Is this fiscally sound to do in this time?
We won't be doing this, we'll do the first interim in December.
Yeah.
We'll be doing the second interim until March. And you
Okay, so
mentioned-
after the first interim.
Oh, after the first
Yeah.
interim. Okay.
Well, that's what I was saying, that, you know, if you're using and I'm just using Troy High School as an example because I'm familiar with it, you're talking the caliber of those students that are in that program. This is an internship for them. They're gonna give you the caliber, I think, that we could use as a test. You know, I'm not saying do that permanently, but maybe that could be our test group to start out with something, check the hits, see if it's something that we want to then go do. So we're not putting a lot of money into something right away. But I truly believe that if you're using, you know, they have to have 60 hours and they have to do well. And these are kids that are going on.
And they probably have the staff members that follow up on that.
And they have papers they have to write, and there's checks, and, I mean, so it's a program where it's not something they're doing as a hobby. It's something that they're doing solely as a program to graduate.
Well, I can support that alternative, sounds.
So, and I don't know if it would be, I don't know if they could do, but I'm just saying, that would be an avenue we can look at
But
to
it's,
test
would it be
it.
our equipment or their equipment? So that's then the next question
Right,
is.
do we buy the equipment?
Right.
I don't know.
You know, and I appreciate wanting it to do it well, but, you know, the reality is, in the early going, the numbers aren't going to be huge. I mean, you might have
10 to, if something big was going on, maybe you'd have hundreds of people watching it, but you're probably gonna have
We're going to be bathroom changes.
5 to 25 people watching it ultimately, depending upon what's on it. Hopefully that would grow, but it's not like there's not an example of what this can look like. I mean, you know, I know for some of you it's not your favorite website, but you can take a look at these videos that have been done very cheaply. And they're quite, you know, they're quite good. You know, they're not gonna win any cinematography awards, but you can see the person's facial expressions and you can hear what, and that's with, you know, a little microphone on top of the camera from 20 feet away. So this is not, I don't think we need to put on a fancy production. We just, you know, transparency doesn't require that we put on a show. Transparency just requires, hey, internet's free for, you know, it doesn't cost any more to put it up there. It doesn't cost any more for somebody to view it. Let's just put it up there. I agree totally. I think the Troy kids would love to. I think they do a fantastic job. I think they do a better job than a lot of people that you pay $400 or $500 a meeting to do.
So I think that we have enough consensus that
Yeah.
we can move on to the next topic.
Well,
Well,
no,
We're gonna
well, I would-
agendize it?
I would move that.
we have a motion
Oh,
from
we do?
Hilda.
What is your motion?
That we agendize this.
But in what capacity? I mean, to just put it on the agenda, does it,
Following
because
the
how
recommendations.
do we vote on something if we don't know who's going to do it and the cost? I mean,
There needs to be a little more research before.
How about if I
it's
come
agendized.
back to the board with some costs for several options? One option is the intern possibility. Let us find
Gotta
out.
see what the high school
Let
district
us find
says.
out what can
Right,
be
it
done.
needs to-
But usually when we bring an item in, we have discussion, and at that point, we can decide specifically how we want the motion to look.
But if there's no cost yet, or who the person is, or are we buying equipment, or are we paying a professional? Is there a contract that's going to be signed? You can't just say, put it on as an agenda item and then say, with all these things blank.
If I could recommend, Hilda, to maybe modify your motion
Yes.
to ask the superintendent to give us, you know, an inexpensive option where maybe it's, you know, under $5,000 in startup costs and try to keep the meeting costs down to a couple hundred, few $100 per meeting, maybe a couple $100 per meeting, and then give us a higher and a higher, you know, than the Cadillac, where we have a very high-end company come in and make this look like a $100. And it'd be an action item, but we could certainly continue the item if we wanted to fine tune a couple of questions to follow, to bring a few recommendations, maybe with their ultimate recommendation, you know, a few possibilities with a recommendation. And we can either continue it or vote on it at that time and make it an action item.
Yes.
If I may ask, you know, 6 or 8 weeks, probably enough to get something like that done, do you
I
think?
think so. Yeah.
Jenny suggested after the first meeting.
Well, but that was when we're paying around.
She was thinking
She's
it's
talking
possible
about,
for
yeah.
money.
If we're looking at really doing it right, I mean.
Well, we only
But
have, I
that
think,
is-
2 board
that's
meetings
6
before
weeks
the
from
end of
now.
the year. We
Well,
have,
that's true. Yeah,
there's,
that's true.
aren't,
That
isn't
is-
Yeah,
there
we
a lot
can't,
of
I'm probably not gonna get it done anyway.
Right.
By the way, I know where we could find a decent videographer, shoot, so.
So that's your quote, okay?
Okay, so I understand the board is asking that we bring something back with some options from intern to least expensive to most expensive with some options. We can put this on a future agenda item for discussion and possibly some action.
Well, it sounds like everyone's interested in it, it's just a matter of how much we want to pay. And I think that's on everyone's mind. No one
I don't
wants to
want to
pay,
pay a lot.
no one wants to, but we see the value in doing it. But we just have a.
And obviously, you need to investigate the ADA issue.
Okay.
Are we voting to put that on?
Yeah.
Or is it-
I think in this
No,
situation, if
Second.
it's a vote and second,
Yeah.
then we consider it then on the agenda, so.
I don't know if anybody seconded it, but I seconded something else.
All you need is, all you need is someone to.
We got a first and a
To
second.
say, like to bring it back, someone second, that's it. Good.
Is there, yeah.
Right, legal counsel?
Correct.
You don't need
I
to
think that was
take
one
this
of our,
formal
that was
vote.
one of our protocols.
Yes, that's right.
You get something on the agenda.
But these are not action items, these are just discussion, and our protocol for discussion items was a motion made, or a recommendation made by a board member and a second, so.
So
Okay.
we'll bring it back then.
Thank you.
The next discussion item has to do with making a tape of something, and it would be recording of closed session discussions.
Can you give us a little legal about that, please?
Yeah, the legal advice is very brief. Yes, it's legal to do that if the board determines that they want to audio tape their closed sessions, but our office has always recommended against it, and we continue to recommend against it, primarily for the reason that we believe it chills the discussion in closed session, and that's an opportunity when the board is lawfully permitted to engage in a robust discussion on very important items, including litigation and labor relations and a number of other things that are very, very sensitive, just in some reason, to some extent why they're permissible in closed session is because you want to have that robust discussion, and it's our office is concerned that won't take place if people know that they're being taped, just because a lot of people don't like to be taped, and it's just human nature. It's not that they're doing anything wrong, it's just something that sort of bothers people, and so that, is it legal to do it? Yes, it is. It's not our advice that you do it, but whether you choose to or not, it is completely up to you as a board.
What happens if you do that and you tape a meeting and those are closed session meetings, so the information, I see it as attorney and client. I mean, it's really truly something that happens, and words should not come out of that room. So now you've got this tape, and you take it and you put it in a closet, and you lock the closet, and sometimes people break in and they get the tapes, or what happens then? Then they go out and it's a free-for-all.
The light, that's certainly possible. First of all,
we've had
but
computers stolen.
you don't take a tape and put it into a closet. You take a digital file and you upload it to a remote secure server that only staff has an ability to get to. There are bodies that record secret meetings legally, and you rarely, I can't think of a single instance, and I'm sure it's happened, but I can't think of the last time it hit the news that a secret audio tape became available on the web. Nixon. Gotta go back. That
wasn't the closed.
Yeah, and that wasn't a legal tape to take. So, our attorneys have no choice. Because the first time I bought my house under a unique purchase contract. And like an idiot, I hired an attorney to get his opinion as to whether or not I should do it. Well, what do you think he said? There's no upside. And I'm not implying you would, but it's an attorney's job. Their job one is to mitigate liability. And so there's no question that if it exists, there are under certain circumstances it can potentially be subpoenaed. And if it doesn't exist, it can't be subpoenaed. So I understand that. And that is would you agree that's probably the biggest risk? That you're creating an audio recording that could be subpoenaed under certain circumstances?
I think that might be the biggest legal risk,
Right.
but the biggest policy reason might be just the chilling effect that it has.
Right. And no offense, but we don't have, I don't feel that we hire attorneys for policy advice. We hire attorneys for legal advice. As a matter of policy, I've already experienced, in my opinion, a significant problem with information being relayed in closed session that was incorrect. And I sure wish that in closed session, amongst our board only, I could go back and replay what was said. Because we could do that, could we not? In closed session, we could play our own recordings of past meetings.
Yes.
Right.
But only if all members in that meeting had been present at the time.
No.
I would think if you have an audio tape of the closed session, I would think that you could play it again
But
for
if you're referring to
yourselves.
things from 2 years ago, and if the other people weren't part of it.
Oh, then no.
Yeah.
But all the sitting board could listen, any of the sitting board could listen to audio tapes
I would certainly.
But from previous years back. I
But-
think they're supposed to be destroyed within 2 to 3 months, aren't
They
they?
can be destroyed
No,
in
can't,
30
not
days,
supposed to.
in 30 days. Well,
You don't want to destroy
But
them ever.
what I read about closed session is that only those that were present at the meeting are privy to the recording. So even if it had been recorded 6 years ago and we weren't all on the board, or sorry, 15 years ago, we would not have privy to listening to that.
I think it's probably, you could only listen to recordings that were recorded during your term of office.
Right. But that changes every.
Yeah, right.
So if you have somebody on the board that wasn't part of that.
But they're still, I mean, I suppose when you get down to a point in time when there's no human on earth that can really listen to it and destroy it, if it ever gets to that point. But I find it counter to transparency to, I have no issues, it's very easy to keep digital files secure. Especially when when the likelihood is there's no intention to ever listen to them. That they exist for the sole purpose.
Yeah, but it's getting scary, all this cyber stuff out there. I mean, to say that nobody can get into it, to me seems scary. Everything I read about it said even if you had a secretary that took notes, it said within 3 months you would destroy them. I mean, closed session exists to keep things confidential and to not have information get beyond those in the room. And so therefore
let me ask you this. So we can take technology out of the debate, or at least debate out of the context of technology. If you magically could be aware that nobody would ever hear that could, would it change your view? Or do you really just not want to record it?
I don't want to record them.
Okay, so technology is a separate issue. So,
Right,
so I mean,
right.
so if you don't want to record them, then there's no point in discussing the technology from your end. I mean, you're certainly welcome to, obviously.
I feel like our closed session, we're talking about the issue at the moment, and that's why we're in there. It isn't an ongoing thing, it's usually the issue of the moment.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think most of the bad stuff that occurs in government occurs behind closed doors. And I think one of the protections that the people have is that they know that a recording does exist. And that we never forget that a recording does exist of what we do whenever we are exercising our authority as an elected official, that a recording always exists of that, even though a closed session cannot be played to anybody other than those who are elected officials.
who were present.
Well, you're saying that, you may be right, but I don't think you're right.
I think that's what
I don't think our
heard.
attorney thinks you're right about that.
and I don't think that's right, because under 54957.2 of the government code, the recording is the minutes, basically, of the closed session, and it says that the minute book, which in this case would be the recording, is available only to members of the legislative body, and it doesn't say that who were present at the meeting. So I think that's true, that you would all have access to it.
Well, that brings up my question when we're talking about minutes. The purpose of recording closed session is to, are you looking to
Have a record of
have a record of what was said and maybe what decisions were made in closed session?
If
A decision that was made.
well,
But decisions never are made in closed
But
session.
there, yeah,
sure,
there are.
of course there are.
Well, not,
Negotiation
No, what are you
decisions are
talking
made.
about?
no, not negotiation decisions
No, but
are not made, those are
employee
made in public.
Employee,
But we vote in public on the employee.
right, but the discussion that you have.
The decision, I mean, be careful how you use the term
Okay, well,
decision.
we report it out here.
Right,
But
right,
the conversations are held there.
right.
So in a conversation, I think is what, well,
For example, if a board breaks the law in closed session, and maybe outside circumstances make it apparent to interested parties, taxpayers or whatever, because of what took place.
Well, that means somebody took information that they
Not
were,
necessarily.
well, how would the public?
Because circumstances could arise where, I can't think of a good example, but where the end result implies that some collaboration had to occur. You know, Capital was accused of basically breaking the law in closed session with contract decisions. And I think it's very likely that wouldn't have happened had those people known a recording was going to exist, but they didn't, because they can't deny it. I think it's a very good thing. Look, right now, we know all of us are morally perfect, right? But someday, maybe somebody will get elected to this body that's not. Someday, maybe 3 people will get elected to this body that aren't morally perfect. And for the taxpayers to know that a record is kept in the case of, they may want to sue us for good reasons. They may want to sue us because we did something bad. I've sued this school district for doing something bad. Now, I don't think closed session recordings would have been required in that case. But, I have no intention of revealing the digital recording. I even advocate for no individual would have an ability outside of the awareness of the super or the board. That if you wanted to listen, you have to come here to listen. I don't know about that.
Well, yeah, that's a good point,
Yeah.
because if you do allow access beyond this, there's
Yeah.
no way of controlling who's listening.
Yeah,
when
no,
you're
I would
listening.
absolutely.
I mean, that's a good point too, you
I would-
just brought up.
I would absolutely advocate for that if a board member wanted to listen, they'd have to do it in a controlled environment where there was no ability for them to leave with that information. But there's no downside. It's not gonna, literally, we all watch the news, we all read the internet. None of us can, Janny made a great point. We're not hearing about private government meetings or justifiably closed government meeting recordings, which you would acknowledge are out there. It probably will ignore me,
I
but
can say that I don't know of any school boards in Orange County that record their
Whether
closed
it's
sessions. That doesn't mean they don't, but I don't
Capo has
think any
to.
of them they
Pentagon
do,
papers.
other than if they've been
that's not
ordered.
recorded.
But it's
And I'm not sure if
secret
the order
documents
is
that
still
are
valid.
very secret and you can't,
Well,
being sent to the public.
I'm not in favor of the recording, but I might entertain one of the, like the summary minutes. And I think that might be valuable for the
Well,
I
superintendent.
think Lynn's point on that, because I was thinking the same thing, but then as I'm thinking about it, we can have a discussion in closed session, and when we have a discussion in closed session, we bring up things and we all have an opinion on something. Someone may say something that will trigger me then to feel the way I feel. And that discussion won't be in a minute. No one's gonna write down so-and-so.
No, you would just
Well, I
summarize
think
the
I'm getting-
topic discussed.
right, but what I'm
and
getting
the
back-
issue raised.
Right, but I guess
It would
my
be very generic.
My point is though, at the end of that, we come out and we vote and then we report it at open session. So what we vote on in there does get reported out here.
Only it's student expulsions.
look,
Doesn't it? I mean, employees,
Employees.
Yeah.
but what doesn't get, if we're doing something wrong, we have a significant ability to deny it, and it's in question. See, you got to understand, I believe Thomas Jefferson was right. That government left to its own devices will become corrupt. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of
So we're
when.
corrupt
And
now.
how, no, Lynn, see, and that's
That's
completely counter to my
everything.
point.
I know, but everything you bring up, it's like,
You're fighting to be able to hide. I'm fighting to not be able to hide. Our founding fathers knew that power corrupts. I'm not saying you're corrupt or I'm corrupt, but left enough freedom, left enough ability. Is Meyer still here? Meyer's home. Left
Shut up.
yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Left enough ability to do the wrong thing, ultimately bodies will and elected officials will. It's these.
you say that, but our districts existed for, 100 years old, and we've not become corrupt. I feel like suddenly, now we have to play whistleblower. I mean, it's kind of like.
So because our districts existed for 100 years and we've never become corrupt, that is justification for making our decisions, assuming we never will.
I feel like now we're suddenly being thrown into all of these, I don't know how to explain it. I just have this sense like
By the way, you say we've never been corrupt? I'll bet you if there were recordings
never
of
is
every
probably-
closed session in the history of this district made available, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if some inappropriate lines were crossed in employee negotiations. I don't know that, but it wouldn't surprise me at all.
But some of those actions are not necessarily closed session items. Negotiations happen in a
You don't
different
have,
context.
you don't advocate for transparency, I do. It's really that's, I don't want
Yeah,
to
but the
release the
things that
stuff.
I'm just thinking that the things that happen in closed session, I mean, just so everybody knows, we don't negotiate the teacher's contract in closed session. I mean, that isn't what's negotiated. in closed
We
session.
discuss the parameters given to our staff
But
to
the
negotiate.
negotiation happens in another context, not with us, so.
Again, we discuss the parameters, the marching orders that they're
Right,
sent into.
right, but the-
You
but the
you act
actual-
as if we don't have a significant, if not the major role in, or half of the major role in what comes out there.
We have the the option of providing what we feel the guidelines should be, but what we want is not necessarily what is.
Why not record it?
Because I'm afraid of what someone would do with information that, if they had access to it.
Excuse me, can I come in here? First, I believe that leaders of organizations, to lead their organizations, need time for careful strategy planning. Things like employee issues and negotiations do require some strategic planning. Buying property, that's another issue that we are allowed to do in closed session. And if we don't want to have the board do strategic planning in private on issues that are legally able to be done in private because the law itself values the importance of having closed sessions dialogue, then we can have all the discussion right out here. And the issue about allowing us to go.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
There's no intent to play this game.
So
I
what's the
understand,
purpose?
so what's
The purpose is, there's two purposes. If we internally need to access it so that we have an accurate memory of what was discussed internally, or if we ever do anything inappropriate, that information is available for legal reasons. But both of those are important reasons. I absolutely agree. We should be able to, in private, with the confidence in the absence of a law being broken, that nobody outside of our body gets to listen to this.
Except we know very well that there's a history of people breaking into Pentagon information. There's a history for people getting into the palace in London. There are many histories of people doing this, and the further technology goes, and we can't take technology out of the issue because that's the instrument we want to use. The further we implement technology, more and more people will have the ability to get into that technology. When you think of use, its research and development building was actually encased in a mesh because they didn't want the satellites above to get the information that
Do
was
you
being
really
discussed
see
in their
spy
building.
planes attempting to get recordings
No,
of
but
all
I
those sessions?
see the potential for
Well,
people.
There's a
to
potential
really
for
don't-
Santa Claus to come down from the sky. I mean,
I hope so. I'm a
the
good girl.
statistical likelihood of that somebody getting this is pretty low. It's not
And the
difficult to
statistical
secure.
likeliness for us doing something corrupt is even lower.
Oh, boy, I couldn't disagree with that statement more.
Okay, you're.
In fact, the statistical likelihood of us doing something corrupt in the next 25 years, I'd put it about half. You know, our city council has done corrupt things. Legislative bodies, all legislative bodies, given enough time, will do corrupt things. They may not get caught. Governments do corrupt things all the time. Well, you don't know who's going to get elected next time. I mean, you know,
And then the
How corrupt
board
would we get
can.
in this job?
oh,
and
you
then
can
the
steal
board
money.
Can,
We can all conspire and steal money. You know, look. I love
Then the
you,
board, I hope,
but
will change their
to
ways.
find it silly that a government that has access to millions of dollars, that a legislative body might do something corrupt, would go against all historical evidence. Because they all ultimately do. Not all individuals, not every.
It's like saying never and all. I mean,
So then the
bigger
purpose
is
is
I mean,
the five
well,
of us, the checks and balances between the five of us. That would take care of that corruption.
Yeah.
Well, that would mean that when there's hundreds and hundreds of people in Congress, that they've never done anything corrupt.
Well,
Look,
we're
I can see where this is
five.
going. You don't believe
That power corrupts.
No, I don't think that's the issue here.
well, it's absolutely the issue, because you're all making the point that you're all kind of shrugging your shoulders and giggling about the fact that I think a body like this could ever do something corrupt.
I don't disagree with that, but I think that's because each one of us would take care of that. If I saw someone going against the Brown Act, I'd report it immediately. And I don't need a recording to do that. I would come right out and report it. And that's how
And
it
I
works.
see, it's not the transparency, I see the main function of the closed session is, as our council pointed out, for free-flowing discussion. You've been in there enough to know it's a very free-flowing discussion.
I've also been in there enough to
Okay.
know that false, unintentional, false information was given and that significant decisions were made off of false, incorrect information. And that there was no record of it to verify that after the
So,
fact.
moving on,
Well, moving
I
on,
would
it's a pretty
say-
big deal.
I would say to you, there are discussions and there are dialogues, and in order to do the best representative service that we can do in this strategic planning part of our job, I believe that free flow of speech is paramount in our closed sessions, and I agree that some of us would speak differently if we are recorded. And
Well,
that's just
I'm
a
done.
personal
You know,
opinion.
I clearly don't have a second, so I'll move that we record a million. I won't get a second, and we can move on. I've made my case. I can't. I wish I was smarter. I can't make it any better than I made it. So.
And I think we all understand where you're coming from. It's just, we feel being able to speak our minds without having the overlying.
I will tell you, I will say, I think it would be irresponsible to not speak your mind even though it was recorded. It would, so, I mean,
I just be nervous of where it's
that's
going.
an emotional, in my view, that's an emotional reaction to a recording. I would forget the thing was turned on the first time it was ever turned on, because I would know that I'm not gonna break a law.
Well, that's probably true.
And so I wouldn't be worried about it ever being subpoenaed, because I know I'm not gonna break a law.
And I'm sure everyone else would probably feel that way too.
Yeah, so, which kind of kills the point of, there's been a lot of talk about it squelching free flow of conversation. Well, if everybody feels the way I just described,
It wouldn't squelch a free flow.
You know, I look at when we started videotaping these meetings. I mean, at first you become apprehensive, and then after a few times, it's
Exactly.
easier. But
You just
I
forget.
still don't like the fact of having that somewhere where somebody could get it. I don't feel comfortable enough to have it out there.
Well,
Hearing
I
no
don't, I don't see anybody, so
That one's off the table.
that one's
then.
done. Thanks for seconding me on that one, Hilda.
to get it on there.
We talked about
Uh,
it. The only reason we could talk about it is to be second.
Hilda gave me a second on putting it on the agenda to talk about.
And I believe it was important to talk about.
So now, moving on, the next one is guidelines and protocol pertaining to board meetings and the timelines for placing an item on the agenda when requested by board members. So, some of it is tied to the timeline behind how the agenda is set up. Some of it is once an item has been moved and seconded, like these items were, when do they come back? We had so many come up at once, we're having all one meeting, but what is our feeling as far as how long it should take? You know, obviously, there are some months in the year that there's only one meeting in the month, and if you bring it up, it may take a while for it to come back
Are
up.
we talking about that right now? Are we, is it modifying future board agenda meetings?
Yeah, that's number.
Oh, that's the, I'm sorry, I was looking
This
at.
is just
Timeline.
how long it takes if we ask for something to go on
No,
the
you're right,
agenda, how
you're
long
right.
it takes.
Yeah,
And the first part of it has to do with the discussion we had regards to guidelines and protocol pertaining to board meetings. As far as, remember, we talked about putting together a Robert's Rule of Order, sort of a little summary sheet.
Handy dandy sheet.
And I think, Chris, you and Bev both sent me some information, and I've taken some of the key ones and put them on here. So on the front side, you can see that there's a parliamentary motions guide, and on the back is just some operating procedures and things that we talked about in previous meetings. So I provided.
Now, I don't know that, thank you for this, but this discussion is specifically just about the concept of how long it should take to
Oh,
put
no,
it.
there's two,
There's
there's
two
really
things.
two items on the
There's
thing.
that's two things.
Oh,
Protocol,
guidelines,
one is guidelines or
oh,
protocol,
and timelines.
and then
Okay,
the other is
I gotcha.
guidelines.
Can I ask you a
I've got those
favor?
for me.
I like this. I'd like to see the front side and back side put on cards. And then put right here on our desks, scotch tape around the cover, so it doesn't hurt the desk. So that when we're doing these things, everybody is aware of both sides and what they're saying, so that, because some of these things, you know, the
Kind of like
chairman.
a cheat sheet in poker?
Well, no, not like that, you know, it's the chairman, it says,
I don't think I want to.
you can stop it, you can stop discussion provided blah, 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 blah. And if the chairman does that, the person who's speaking may feel hurt. But then if they look down at their little thing, they'll say, oh, that's the job of the chairman. Okay, let's move on, or whatever. And then the votes about majority and 2/3, that's
Good to
important
know.
to know. And having it right in front of us, then we all know, and there's not any discussion, it's right there.
You know, I don't think we've had a really hot item on this board since I've been on it. You know, I think back to naming a fiscal school, I think back to support, IB at Beechwood. There's been some hot items where, you get into a situation where, two people feel real strong, one's in the middle, there's some parliamentary brinksmanship going on. That's when this stuff becomes critical, that we follow. Because that's when, there needs to be rules so that it's fair and legal and at the end of the day, we've got to decide. And I also want to say that, what started this for me was just kind of feeling like I was being shut down, and I haven't felt that way lately. And I feel like we've been a little bit, this whole body sort of become more pro letting people speak.
Well, part of that comes with new board members
Right.
learning to work together,
Yes.
which we've done really well.
So I don't, I don't want to make, personally, I don't want to make this crazy difficult. Maybe what we can do is have the hardcore rules, and if we get into a real tough thing, we can say, we agree to move into strict parliamentary procedure. And maybe that could be a policy, we could just have that one board member, I would even advocate for one board member being allowed to move for that. That it become
Not
more.
if it's parliamentary.
I think it should be across the board and we should be able to refer to it any time.
Well, so do I, but we tend to not, 99% of the time, we don't struggle with parliamentary
Well,
procedure.
there have been a couple of board meetings in which we probably could have called a question, and I think
Well,
that-
maybe it doesn't need to be taped down, but it could sit.
No, and I truly think that, at the end of the day,
Yeah, I don't think it
I
would
went on the
hurt.
back of my hand when I come in here.
I don't think it would hurt to have it be in the drawer, but it doesn't need to be taped.
I just truly think that it's something that we can use.
Yeah.
Just like
I go back to, these meetings are our board meetings.
Yeah.
It's the time that our board gets to do the business of the district. There is no other time that we, as a group of 5, can talk about issues that come up here on the board. I've always been a very big proponent of having discussion about items, and so I enjoy that piece of it, because I fully think that until I've been able to talk about something, I can't make a decision, because I want other people's opinions. Now, there have been times that we've gone through this, and some of us get a little bit more rambunctious on our opinions, and some of us don't. And I truly think that
Janny is crazy.
when we have something here, and I'll just use me as an example, we had an issue that we closed debate on, and I think that's kind of when this came up.
Yeah, that's
is
right.
The question was
Yeah.
called,
Right,
I felt I was being shut down,
right.
And we did it, but I didn't know, I knew we needed a vote, but I didn't know what it was. Was it majority or was it 2/3? So I, as a board member, couldn't speak up. And I didn't feel comfortable enough to speak up because I wasn't sure what the law was. So in going back and researching that, I discovered that it was a little different from what we did. So I think that's kind of when this started. Because we all should have an ability to speak our mind. However, there is a time, as a board member, if I'm up here and I feel like we 5 have lost control of our meeting and we are no longer productive, we need to start going back to parliamentary procedure. And then when you call the question, you call the question, but you know how to call the question. If you want to call a recess and you want to say, you know what, let's take some time to calm down, to walk away from the table and come back. As a board member, I want these meetings to be productive. I don't want people to feel like we're sitting up here argumentative or we're not productive. Because if I start to get angry at something, I then become not productive.
Sure.
And I don't want that to happen because then I'm not doing the job I was voted in to do.
So I have a recommendation, and I would like to know if our attorney thinks, boy, it's nice having an attorney here, that this is a reasonable recommendation, that you know, we're real simple, you know, issues brought up, we talk about it, Lynn lets everybody talk, somebody calls the question, we let everybody talk till they're done talking. And then there's either a second and we vote or whatever, and it's all fine. But when it gets tense and that somebody can say no, they can then turn to the rules, and if the person is knowledgeable of a set of rules that we've approved, you can kind of let it be comfortable and casual until you need them. And then you state the rule that you need. I mean, that works, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. I mean, I think that these rules generally are, you know, you don't have to have strict technical compliance with them every second. They are more there for when there becomes an issue and the meeting is losing order. I mean, they're meant to keep the order of the meeting.
My perception of losing order might be different than somebody else's.
Right, and so that doesn't mean that they're not always in force. I mean, I think they're always in force. The question is, do you have to strictly interpret them every single second and make sure that there's a parliamentarian expert?
But my read of the law on this is, and Lynn would, I don't think Lynn would do this, but as an example, if Lynn just decided to ignore it, that there's not necessarily any law.
No, we don't have to follow them.
No.
But I mean, that we
She could do
could
anything
be
she wants.
wanting her to follow them, and she could just say, no, I don't like that rule. Somebody called the question, I'm calling the question. Vote.
Arguably, but I think
could.
if a board, I'm sorry to interrupt you, were you finished?
No, but that
She
could
was
happen,
agreeing.
but
Okay.
that's why Robert's rules exist, so that another person could stop that from happening by saying, I refuse to vote, or whatever it is, just say that.
Can a body could we do something like, on a single board member request, say, I request that we move into strict adherence of some pre-designated rules? Is that possible? Or
Yeah, I mean, it's
and
sort of up
then
to
the
you.
chair would be compelled to abide by it?
Only if there's a vote, I mean, that's.
Well, not if we, I mean, could we vote and say, okay, here's a vote, and we vote, this is the legal book. But we all acknowledge we're not really going to worry about it too much until it becomes an issue. But Bev could just say, you know what, I call for strict adherence to the rules. And we have agreed that if one person ever calls for that, that's what will legally happen. Could we set that up?
Legally, yes.
Okay.
Hey,
I think that's what we should
want to
do.
give you a scenario.
Yeah.
According to our public comment policy, and I believe it's that we are not to have a dialogue with people who come to speak at public comments because those comments haven't been agendized. And then any one of us, and all of us at different times, will say, gee, Mrs. Jones, could you expand? Or I agree with that, or blah, blah, whatever. It's against our policy. And yet, for the chair to turn around and say, Hilda, excuse me, that's out of line, suddenly makes it look like Lynn is a grump. And the real issue is Hilda was out of line, okay?
Sure.
And how do you determine when to allow someone to have a dialogue and when not to. And so if we have one protocol and we all stick to it, then we know what's expected of us. And, you know,
Here's the challenge. We don't stick to it, and we're all cool with that, because none of us want to live, we don't want to look like, you know, an exercise in absolute crazy techno adherence to Robert's rules, because it's a pain in the butt.
But
We don't stick to it? I
But
mean,
the
is there
only
a lot of
time
stuff
we do
don't
stick to it
Well,
when
we do, I
it comes
think-
to action items. I mean, there's a huge difference between a discussion occurring over the play that happened at Pacific
Yeah,
Drive
of
and they're
course.
reporting on it, and that's
Yeah.
kind of where we break some of our policy
Sure.
rules because we'll make a comment or interject or ask for further clarification. But I do feel we follow the rules, Robert's rules, the order of a meeting when it comes to the handling of the business.
Right.
When it comes down to that, and that's really what this is about. When an item is going to be voted on, how was it placed on the agenda? How was it brought forth to be voted on? Who seconded? Was there discussion? Was there an opportunity to express opinions? Are all ready to, have they gotten enough information? Are we now set to make the vote? The other stuff, okay, we probably a little loosey-goosey with some of the other stuff.
Those are presentations from the school,
Yeah.
it's really not
But
an
that's-
item on our.
Right, but that's where we lose some of the control of our meeting. But I do think we follow Robert's rules, and we've been very good about that with making sure there's a second, who, you know.
Yeah, I don't
putting
disagree
it
with
forth.
that. I mean, there with a couple of, you know, and you know, I'm certain I would make errors over the course of a year, but I would generally agree with what you said.
Yeah.
I just think it's important that when it is a critical issue,
And I think we
an
learned
individual board member, you know,
And I think we learned a valuable lesson over an action item that we assumed by an old PTA standard, what was right was done, and then we've been educated since.
right.
if you want to go with this, you could go the other way if that's what we vote to do. Like here it says, to close a meeting, you need a majority, okay?
But if
You
you're
could
going to say
you
you're
need
going to go with
two-thirds.
Robert's rules, you would, Robert's rules has laid out your procedure for,
But as we look at this now, we could say, gee, to close debate, maybe we don't want two-thirds, maybe we want a majority. Nobody's brought that up for dialogue right now.
Yeah.
We've just
Well,
assumed that
we
we'll
never
accept-
really, I thought we were going to, you know, literally bring in a Robert's Rules expert and do like, somebody could take us through some hypotheticals and it would help us to make decisions about what set of rules we want, because there's different books and there's toggle switches and different choices you can make about those things, and we've never gone through that. I will also tell you that my concern about the issue has significantly diminished because, to Lynn's credit, you know, the acknowledgement that it probably wasn't handled technically correctly was made, and I don't know that we have a huge problem.
Well,
I don't think we do have a huge problem.
I'm going to say that there's a couple of board meetings that have
Irked you?
made me to the point where I have a hard time going on. You know me.
Right, yeah.
That's just how I am.
Right.
So I will use this if I start to feel like I am, and that's what I'm saying, is I truly want to be able to use it whenever we feel like we need to control our meetings. I think we've got to be able, we five have to be able to control ourselves. These are our meetings, we need to take control, and we need to have the ability to do that.
I think the right answer is that we pick a book, whatever it is, whatever
I don't
edition.
think we need that much.
Okay, then we pick then we pick a chart, and we say we will agree, we will abide by this chart, but we don't really need to worry about it tremendously until somebody says, look, I'm calling blah, 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 you know.
I think it's
And
great.
Lynn goes up, and then Lynn, and then says, you know what, okay, Deb's feeling stressed, and I'm gonna do it this way.
Well, I don't want to have to say, stop, I'm feeling stressed. I just want to say, I call for the vote.
We just rarely say things like, you know, point of information, you know, Chairman, that was incorrect, we need to do it this way. We rarely break into that kind of thing. And when you do, then we'll all break out our chart and see
And
what
we'll
we
have
gotta
it
do.
right here. I mean,
So maybe we need laminated cards. I want a big one, like this big.
Now, do
The
we
chain.
agree with what's here, though? That was the point I was trying to bring up. Do you want two-thirds on some of this? Do you want them all majority?
I think
How do
that
you want
these
it?
are guidelines, right? We can't change this.
Yeah, we can.
your job.
These are, I mean, yes, you can change things, but I would be very wary of it because Robert's rules have been around for a really long time and there's usually a very good reason why
Yeah,
they
that's
have a
right.
supermajority vote in certain cases, because in those cases, you're limiting discussion. And, you know, you want to make sure you're not doing that lightly to the disadvantage of the perhaps dissenting members. And so, I mean, I would be very, very wary
Because
of
2/3 is
changing.
4 out of 5.
Right. So, I mean, that's not even just Robert's rules. I mean, pretty much any parliamentary procedure rules that you might choose are probably going to have supermajority votes in these same instances, like limiting debate, closing debate.
Right.
You know, there's a good reason why those are
Right.
like that. So, you know,
But we should look at it and be sure that's how we wish to do it.
right.
And the ones that want majority, maybe somebody wants them to have supermajority.
Well, I think it's a little more than just saying we're gonna follow this, because there's a lot of other questions that could come up. And I believe what led into this is we don't have a policy in place that says we will follow Robert's rules. So we really don't have any parliamentary procedure policy. But if we decide we want to follow Robert's rules, we can't then open up the book and say, oh, but I don't want this one, and I like this one, and if this one was
Right, but
illegal.
so is this not true of bodies that do vote to abide by Robert's rules? You know, if I move Robert, I want us to abide by Robert's rules, 11th edition, blah, blah, until we move to change the vote. Most bodies kind of do it the way they normally do it until an issue arises.
Right. Then we pull out.
And if a little tiny rule is broken in a 4-to-1 vote, there's really no legal issue there.
That's true, and I guess the reason why I like Rosenberg's rules as opposed to Robert's rules, and Judge Rosenberg is the presiding judge in the Sacramento area and sat on the Davis City Council, I believe, and I know I think he sat on the school board at some point as well. I mean, so he's very expert in the parliamentary procedures, and he decided, and I agree, that the Robert's rules, it's just too much for people to really be facile with it and be able to be effective with it. It's a book this thick, and you know, it's just too much. You don't need all of it. So he really tried to simplify it, and I think that working with those rules is where where the superintendent came up with, you know, this sort of easy guide for you. So if you were inclined to adopt some rules, I would suggest that you adopt something less complicated.
Then I'm going to make a motion that we agendize adopting a set of parliamentary procedures. And that'll give us time to look at Rosenberg's rules and re-examine Robert's rules. And so at a future date, we could choose, if we so choose, can adopt a set of rules. And we can know that we're usually, you know, we rarely have 3-2 votes. I mean, occasionally, but we go most meetings without 3-2 votes. We usually have 4-1 or 5-0 votes. And so anybody that needs to enact a rule to stop something or end a discussion or prevent a discussion from being ended will have the ability to use those rules.
I'll second that.
So let me understand what it is you want, because this is why,
I think it's, no matter what, this might still stand. I think what we're looking for is a policy that says, I believe if you looked at PTA bylaws or National Charity League bylaws, it always states this body follows Robert's Rules of Order.
But we can
We
say
don't
all
have
about
a policy, but we need to choose one.
We could do our chart. We follow
No,
our
if
chart.
you adopt
If you
Robert's
adopt the
rules,
rules,
you're
you
not, you
bound
don't,
by
you
all.
don't cross out.
What you do is you adopt, if you adopt Rosenberg's rules, I'm sure there's a chart for, a simple
Right.
chart for Rosenberg rules, is
Right.
the 80-20 rule of what
It's
you
this.
need.
Yeah.
So you've got Rosenberg's rules, but 90% of the answers are in the car.
But I want Hilda to understand, we're not gonna
No,
then,
I understand.
we're not gonna
I
say,
just
but-
wanted
Yeah.
to rule that we weren't going formally with Robert's rules, and so I was throwing out the question of, do we want to adapt rules specifically for our board? And the answer is clearly probably not, that we want to find a protocol and follow that protocol.
okay, because my understanding was, when we talked about this, is that we would take the key ones from either Robert's Rules of Order or Rosenberg, which some of this is from Rosenberg, because it's the same thing, and put together in an easy to follow guide. If you adopt Rosenberg's rules, then are we not bound by all of Rosenberg's rules?
Well, I mean, for example, I advise the County Committee on School District Organization, and their bylaw on parliamentary procedure says that essentially it will be informal, but if there's a question, then I think it's Robert's rules will be followed.
I love that.
So that, I mean, you can use that kind of language in your bylaw.
It's informal until somebody starts busting out a good rule, you know? And that's really how it works.
But you need a document to go to if you're being questioned.
Well, the document would be.
Right, but that's why you need to state in the policy which book you're pulling out.
I think we need to choose. We need to
Right.
choose
We need a
Rosenberg or
board
Roberts.
policy to say what.
Yeah.
And whichever one we choose, and we have a chart, you know, the best chart for that one.
I agree.
You know, and if you're coming into, if you're coming into a tight meeting, you might want to do your homework before the meeting if you think you might need one of these rules. Seriously, you know, I mean, they're,
Well, Beverly does that quite often. She brings her little book.
Okay, so
So we have to get a new one if we get Rosenberg, so.
my understanding is then that the board is asked that we come back with some kind of
A board-
bylaw or
a board
policy
policy.
to come back to the board.
Because we'll put it as a protocol or a policy, right?
yeah, I think you should come back with a
Board policy.
maybe
Guideline.
talk about what that's, I love that, you know, we're generally, what was it, you didn't use the word casual.
And I don't have the wording
Yeah.
with me right now, but that's the sense of
Some
it,
kind
is
of
that-
policy that acknowledges we're generally informal until there's an issue.
Right.
And we do officially use these rules. That's what's in force when it becomes an issue.
Most boards have a policy about how they, don't they?
Yeah.
We were kind of surprised
Yeah.
we didn't have
It's
one.
usually a bylaw, it's
Yeah.
usually mentioned.
We do have bylaws, we have board bylaws, but our bylaws don't address what
Yeah.
Parliament, where we.
I was
follow.
surprised, just knowing
Yeah.
how much PTA goes through with that and.
Well, because I found the bylaws,
Yeah.
and that was,
Yeah, I just was surprised all these years that.
So I would, I think the answer to the question is you're going to recommend
A
a
policy.
policy accompanied by either Rosenberg's rules or Robert's rules.
And since it would be 2 readings, maybe we should have one that shows Rosenberg's and one, no?
Would,
Are we,
would it
because
be
we
a
don't really know which
bylaw
one
or
we're
a
choosing.
policy?
Robert's rules
It would probably be a bylaw would be the
So,
appropriate place, because
so
that's
you'd be
where you.
presenting us with a bylaw,
Yeah, oh,
So a board bylaw, then.
okay. Oh,
Okay.
by which we operate.
but we need to decide if we're doing Rosenberg or,
Well, let me work with legal counsel on that and come back.
I'm sure one of the districts in Orange County has one that's ideal.
Well, there's only 2 there.
I
Well,
mean,
no, he's
a
talking about
policy.
the.
Oh, bylaw.
oh, the bylaw is not the problem, it's what do you put in it, which one?
I'm
Robert's
saying, I'm
rules or-
sure there's an ideal one that we would all like out there.
CSBA probably has a policy.
I don't actually know the CSBA policy offhand, I don't know that it refers specifically to
Maybe
which
we
set
can
of
find,
rules.
as
I'm not
board
sure, I can
members, we
check.
can find bylaws from other places.
Well,
fairly
the
easy.
bylaws are easy, it's just what you're
Yeah.
slipping in.
Yeah, I mean, I think-
Robert's rules.
Historically,
Right.
a lot of public entities have relied on Robert's rules,
Yeah.
but as time goes on and people realize how unruly they are, I think that's changing. But I think if you if you look, probably the majority still might reference Robert's rules, I'm just not sure anyone really uses them
So
effectively.
I guess what Lynn's point is that when we bring this up, you cannot outline the entire Robert's Rules book and the entire,
No,
other guidebook. I mean, you can't do that. So as a board member, I'm gonna have to take some responsibility, to take a look at the 2
Right.
documents and figure out which one I think would.
I'm certain you'll find in 30 seconds on Google sort of a 30,000 foot.
Right, I know which one I would use, so
Which one do you?
I would use the other guy.
Rosenberg.
Rosenberg?
Yeah.
I mean,
Have you looked at
and there's other options, the county board of ed has its own set of, and I don't honestly
Yeah, we don't
know
need to reinvent
that
the wheel.
set.
No.
I mean,
Or
for
how
what
come
we
it
need
is.
it for, we'll have 1 or 2 or 3 discussions that we probably are going to get our ammunition in our back pocket to pull out.
By the way, you can vote to suspend the rules.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
if you don't like,
So
I'll vote
let's
for
figure out what to
whichever
do
one.
when we see suspend rules.
Okay, so.
So our homework
we're gonna
is,
take
our
those
homework is to
seven.
look at Rosenberg's rules, because we probably all are pretty familiar and have learned even more about them at Robert's rules. So look at Rosenberg so that if it's brought forth that that's a recommendation, we are familiar with it. Okay.
Okay, I will work with legal counsel to come back.
The other half of that, of item 3, had to do with the timeline for placing an item on the agenda, which we know that sometimes cabinet needs more than the 2 weeks between meetings to get something ready. So is 2 weeks too short, too long? Is 9 weeks the best? Is 32 weeks the preferred?
Well, what I've included for you, so you have an idea of timeline as far as when it gets to the board, there's a sheet I've included here. And you can see that the board meeting is on the left, so like say, take for example, the first one, which was January the 18th. You can see that we start 2 weeks ahead of time, a good 2 weeks ahead of time, just to begin to put it
Is this
together.
talking though about, are you
No,
on 4
no,
or are you on
this is
3?
also the cabinet's
This is-
ability to get
this-
something.
This involves staff, the time that it takes for us to prepare the item, put together, to write up the item, to discuss it in cabinet, and then have review of it before it even comes to the board. Before Lynn and I meet, as board president superintendent, we meet to go over it. So that gives you an idea of the timeline of what guidelines and frameworks we're working within just to even get something to the board.
This whole discussion that we've had previous to tonight on this topic makes me feel like I'm in crazy world, because I literally don't think I've gotten my point across. I personally have no issue with how long it takes to assemble an agenda. Not worried about it. It takes how long it takes, and I don't think anybody's not doing their best to get it done quickly. My issue, and this, I so appreciate you doing this, all I'm saying is use this, create this at the beginning of the year, the way you've done every year, and move every meeting, say all of this, I'm circling the top line of everything but the meeting. All of these deadlines that create Agenda X, move the meeting that uses Agenda X to the meeting below that. Which means, all that means is we are going, huh?
I don't think we're talking about the
No.
same thing right now. The
What are we
item
talking-
that's number 3, from what I'm understanding, is when
I'm sorry.
we as a board, no, it's okay, when we as a board have an item that we want to put on the agenda. So say, for instance, I want to put videotaping on the agenda. We get a second, right? And then how long does it take to get that item on the agenda? Although I think my point on this one was, I just wanted to set
The next meeting
in
is
2 meetings, you will come back and say, we're ready for it, or we need more preparation time, it's gonna be here. But have some kind of guideline that says, as a board member,
I agree.
I put something on an agenda. I wanna say standard time is a month. If you need more than a month, then you come and say, we're working on this, we need more staff time, blah, 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 and you bring it. But at least by putting that item on the agenda, in a month, I know it's either gonna be on the agenda, or you're gonna tell me why you can't have it on the agenda.
I think a
And
great
that
policy,
was my point with that
a
one.
great policy would be that it will be on the agenda after next, or the superintendent will notify the board before the next agenda when it's going to be on the agenda. So it gives the super an opportunity to say, you know, after looking at this, I realize I can't get this done. So you know, there's freedom. There's just an assumption that it's going to be no more than the meeting after next,
Or an intent.
or a notification of a specific goal.
And this one takes too long, we have
Well, so
3 more months. You know,
either
and that's
a
fine.
placement on the agenda or update report
Right.
on the status.
Well, just so you know that your item is not in La La Land.
Now, do we need a policy in this, or can we just state that and ask the superintendent to do
Just
it?
give direction.
Give
I'm cool with
directions?
that.
Okay, so that works.
It's
Does
an
that make
expectation.
sense? It'll be the meeting after next unless you let us know a different specific
Is
date.
that doable?
It depends upon what's being asked, but
But then you
But
can
that's why
say.
you have the
in
update.
2
but
meetings
if I
you can
need
say.
more time, I'll just say we need more time.
Absolutely.
For me, it was just, you know, on certain agenda items, feeling like, you know, I can't get any information on when this thing's gonna hit the agenda, I just have to live with whatever I get.
I used Meyer as the example, because I remember Meyer put some stuff on there, and I don't know if I ever got the answer.
Well, some of it were sent in Thursday packets.
Oh,
And sometimes.
Sometimes it's
Sometimes we
information
do
and
it,
it's
yeah,
a request to
Thursday
be on
packet.
the agenda.
Not an agenda item.
Yeah.
Right, so packet like it's information.
Okay,
Right, so it's the meeting.
Okay, I'm sorry, that's what
It's
that
the meeting after the
two
next one.
meetings, yeah.
It's a second, it's a meeting
Either
after the
A
next one.
month.
Not the next one, but the next one.
Right, and if that's not doable, then say, we need more time.
Before the next meeting.
Before you would expect it on the
We're
agenda.
meeting 0 today, then there's meeting 1, meeting 2. It's gonna be at meeting, if we put something on the agenda today, it's gonna be in meeting 2. Unless you decide it can't be, then you will let us know before meeting 1 that it's not gonna be at
That
meeting
may
2.
or may not be
Or,
possible.
no, before meeting 2.
Before
Okay,
meeting
that's
two.
fine.
In board packet.
Because I may be thinking I can do it, and then
Okay.
we get past the next, we say, gee, you know.
So-
Well, since
By
it's
the
not
board
a,
packet,
it's a
so-
guideline.
Yeah, okay.
So in the board packet before that meeting.
And if you're
I would
looking,
just say, yeah.
you're talking about them, you know, look at the timeline for things. Things are already in place for 2 weeks away, and we're saying, no, you gotta add this, but if they're working on other things, what's the
Well,
reality
then
of adding?
maybe two meetings isn't,
Right.
maybe it should be 3 meetings.
Well, I think 2 meetings that it would be placed, or an update of the status.
Right. I may need that third meeting, but at least I can tell you before that second meeting to say, gee, still trying to collect information, gonna not be ready, so we'll put it to the next one.
Some stuff could come up the next meeting.
Oh, yeah, it could be,
Yeah, that's
the easy
Yeah.
stuff, and you can get done with it. Okay,
Now,
now we can move on to that.
now we're talking about modifying meeting dates, which means that the agenda would be posted, from what you're saying, a week and a half before.
What I'm
Which
saying.
means it's gonna be, we would meet
what
on
I-
Tuesday and be posted on Thursday for 2
Here-
weeks
here's
later? Or-
My issue is, I think it's an absolute disservice, this is not a slight on staff, because staff's not doing anything wrong. It's a disservice to us and the community that there is not enough time to sufficiently give staff time to answer our questions. Forget read, I mean, you can certainly read an agenda and supporting information in a few days, but you can't read an agenda, have profound questions that you need answers to. Maybe you need research that does require a long time, or you need staff to do research. Getting an agenda the Thursday before the Tuesday meeting is not representative of good government. And the answer is so simple, it's painful. The answer is merely, do your schedule for your staff about, you know, you've got items due to assistant soups, executive account reviews items, secretaries review items, board president and soup meet, board agenda posting date. You leave all of that the same, but you shift all the meeting dates down 1 meeting. It'll give you 3.
Up 1 meeting.
So you're saying all that
No,
happens on
down
February
1
8th?
meeting. You move the January, you know,
But that, I'm just pointing out, that means that the agenda that's posted on January 13th would really be for
For
the
February.
February 8th.
sure.
Yeah, I mean, but you won't even know on, the meeting is gonna happen on the 18th. So you're now gonna, there would be a meeting on, no, there would be a meeting on the 18th, and that agenda would have been done,
We do that
In
in
December.
Christmas.
Would have been done a few weeks before that.
right, over Christmas, but it really would have been done
Well, I
in
mean,
December.
you know, over Christmas is not the point.
Okay, let's take May. That means that March 31st, you would have posted the agenda for the May 3rd, or the May 24th meeting.
And then you're gonna have.
No, March 31st, you would have posted. You would have posted for the May
The
3rd.
third meeting, the May 3rd.
3rd meeting.
May
Oh.
3rd, yes,
Yeah.
May 3rd.
So it's a
March,
month
a month and a
ahead.
half ahead of time.
No. Why not?
Expenses.
Well,
What
because,
expense? It's the same.
because at March 31st, do they know what they really want on the May 3rd meeting? Because that's really gonna be looked at April 18th. Because they won't even have,
Well, okay, there may be periods after breaks where the philosophy, the point is,
let's put it this way, what day do you think the agenda should be posted?
I think a minimum of a week ahead of time would be good.
I have a question. And staff could probably help answer this, is when you're looking at something like that and you're saying post an agenda a week, 2 weeks ahead of the meeting, what does that do? Does that do anything different to what you guys are doing?
No, it's impossible for some of the financial reports we have to do, because first interim, legally, we have to have turned to the county by December 15th, so we have 1 meeting in December. You know, back it up now, the report needs to be done by November 28th. Backing up more than that, that's a report as of October 31st. we don't close our books till like November 15th, so
Totally get it.
it's like that
Yeah.
for
And
us.
so I think it would be a fairly simple matter to, when there's something where they don't even get the information, they can't even possibly generate a report until a certain date, and yet the law compels them to have it approved by a certain date. Those items may come in a supplemental or updated agenda at a later date. So probably the most confusing thing about this is we probably would move into a world of everything that can be done early would, and everything that can't would come probably the Thursday before. So a lot of the financial stuff where the calendar just.
But that's confusing to the public to post two agendas.
No, you're not posting
Mark
two
has something
agendas.
to-
Go ahead, Mark.
Business piece is one piece, the personnel thing is another. And I hear what you're saying, Chris. You do have a problem with transparency at some point in time, which is an issue I know that you carry. When you have, I'll call it 2 layers of a board kind of coming forward, there are certain personnel pieces that, for example, I have to take action on March 15th, May 1st. There's a variety of things for layoffs that have to come in a certain timely fashion to you. And I don't have but about a week and a half, 2 weeks to finalize and complete that information for you to vote. If it doesn't get to you in a fashion that you vote, you've lost your opportunity to make major decisions as a board. So, and I hear what you're saying too. It's like you want maybe a day more or 2 days more.
Well, anything more would be good. I hear what you're saying, and you can't do what you can't do. If information becomes available by a certain date, and we are legally compelled, or wisdom would demand that we jump on it right away, that's a circumstance we've got to deal with. But as you make this calendar, you could certainly think in terms of how do we change these due dates so that we can post an agenda, 5 business days ahead of a meeting versus what is now 2. Look, I don't need 3 weeks. I understand that my little simple solution isn't so simple, stipulated. But that doesn't negate the point that there are tons of, how many times have all of us, and hundreds for you guys that have been on the board a long time, where you'd love to ask a question that is just Mitch is gonna smack his forehead on the desk. Because you know how busy he is, you know how in-depth the question is, and you don't want to torture it because,
Well, we ask those questions, so just ask them early.
But the earliest you could possibly ask it is 2 business days before the meeting.
Right?
Oh, Friday.
Is there a way
That's
you could
2
do an
business days.
agenda and have an addendum legally?
As long as it's 72 hours before.
So we
But
could
you-
put out the first agenda like on Monday or Tuesday and then have an addendum?
There's
So
another
look
thing
at
we
the
could
dates, I mean,
change.
you gotta
We
look at the
could
reality of
Make
what
the
you.
agenda come out, we could change our board meetings to Wednesday. And the stuff could come out on Thursday night, and then you'd have an extra day.
Can I ask Karen a question for the board, perhaps for myself? We're talking about posting to the public, okay? Is there anything that legally, or Brown Act or anything else, that is against having the board get a draft of the board before it's actually posted? In other words, it's not a finalized, posted agenda, it's a draft?
That's a great idea.
I just think that anything that goes to the board is available to the public.
That's a transparency
That's the
thing.
problem.
Which is, who cares? It's not the official agenda. You could put unapproved draft agenda at the very top.
See, because what I'm worried about, and what tends to be our problem, is the typos, the date changes, the stuff
Final
that,
dollar amount.
yeah, dollar amounts, other sorts of things that it takes. I don't know how many times we go over these wonderful opportunities. And so the biggest concern that Mitch would have would be a document going out to the public that wasn't prime time ready because it states a
And there were
dollar
errors
amount
in
or
it.
something that's not accurate. If it
And
was
then we're asking questions on something that's not right.
Well, look, you can,
Sorry.
I was just asking the question because I wasn't clear.
But look, and this is gonna sound, for me, Mr. Transparency is gonna sound non-transparent. You don't have to publish it, you just have, if somebody requests it, you gotta give it to them. So, it's not like we're putting the draft up on the website, we distribute the draft to us. If somebody does a records request, they can have it, yeah, you can have it. But they understand, they had to ask for it. If we have an opportunity to say, you understand this is not the approved agenda, this is just a working draft, here you go.
But I agree, I understand what you guys are saying, I just want to throw out the fact that if I'm going to get that draft of an agenda, it's probably going to take you guys a lot of time because I'm going to find all your errors.
That's right.
And then I'm going to say, well, what do you mean by this? And you're then going to have to justify that that's wrong because, and I don't know if that's double work or not because that's, that's what happens.
It's a reasonable point, but at the end of the day, I would say the compelling need for the elected body to have sufficient time to review and receive information is more compelling than the need to manage their workload.
How about this? How about if we were to keep it as it was, but be more stringent on, okay, you get your, you post the agenda. Right now, sometimes we post early on Thursday, sometimes we post late, sometimes we post on Friday. If we say, you gotta give the board enough time to truly be able to take it, because my concern is that if you post on late Thursday, early Friday, as a board member, that gives me the weekend to go through it, and I don't mind doing that because that's what we do. I get the questions back to you guys on Monday at some point, and you guys are in cabinet usually Monday morning, so you don't usually, the old time, and I have a solution for it, you don't usually see those questions sometimes until afternoon on Monday. Our meetings are Tuesday at whatever time. Some of us, we work, we have other things that we've got going on, so if I send you questions and then you get back to me first thing Tuesday morning, because realistically, if you don't look at it till Monday afternoon, you get all your answers, Tuesday morning, you send them to me. On the fourth Tuesday of the month, I am nowhere to be found until 3:30, 4 in the afternoon. So I can't then look at your answers and then process it enough to make a decision that I feel comfortable with here. So I think that has been my issue. If we were to kind of say, okay, Thursday morning, maybe you guys meet Monday instead of Tuesday, or maybe you meet, whatever it takes.
Sunday.
We post Thursday morning latest, it gives us then all day Thursday, all day Friday, and if we could do the weekend, but if we then say, all of us, you guys are listening,
You are listening.
all of us,
Very true.
then read everything, we get all of our questions, and we have our questions to Mitch. Say we all go to one individual person, so you send them all to Mitch, all these questions, he takes them into cabinet with him, you got everyone there, and then you divvy out, because sometimes we're asking the same questions.
I hear you.
But I'm just saying that will give me more
It's better than what we have now, but going from Thursday, sometimes middle, occasional Friday to Thursday morning deadline isn't really
But
changing.
that gives us 4 days to look at the,
Like, to your point, this is not a full-time job. And there are times when Thursdays and Fridays are, we need, and I'm not saying I don't have to make it a priority.
it's a commitment that we make.
Of course, but we could also tell, that doesn't mean it's not smarter. It's smarter to give us more. At the end of the day, it's just not wise to have 2 business days to read, ask questions, get questions back.
But
For our business, their business.
we're trying to do 4 now, Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday. If you do Thursday morning, if you say, if it's ready by Wednesday night when you leave, you can post it Thursday morning.
But we're already getting it Thursday most times.
And for
So it's not, and so when I say 2 business days, I'm discounting Tuesday. I'm talking about, you get it at the end of the day Thursday, you have it Friday, Monday. And they're in cabinet all day Monday. And Friday, quite honestly, you tend to not get snap answers on Fridays. It's tough. It's very, it's over the
Are
week.
you getting it in paper still, or are you doing it online?
I do both, but I do get it in paper. I, of course, have access to it online.
Because I was gonna say, when we get it online, we get it instantly.
I get it instantly like you do, yeah. It's not a matter of, you're talking, if I wanted to look online, I can look online instantly.
I guess my question to.
It's not enough time to get answers. They don't have enough time to answer our questions.
Is there anything that, I mean, you'll do what we have to do, and I know that, but I also don't want to send your lives in a turmoil, and I don't want to do something that's going to be counterproductive, and that we're going to always have to amend, and we're always going to have to add, and,
That
you know,
doesn't
and
look
that's
good.
just wasting your time. I mean, it's wasting resources, I think. So is there something that we can do, given the fact that board members really truly want to understand and want to ask the right questions and get the answers back in time enough to be able to process them? Is there any solutions that you guys can offer that would help us?
Mark just did, it's awesome. Posted, give us a draft on Tuesday.
I would find all kinds of errors with that, and then I would take my time saying, what's wrong
Well,
with
no,
this?
because they would have to work, they would have to take some steps to make that draft. They would have to tighten it up a little bit.
Only post things that are ready.
Yeah, I posted things that are
Wouldn't be
right.
posted,
Seriously.
post a partial agenda.
Because you
Carmen,
wouldn't post a draft, because a draft's not a public record, and you don't want to make it a public record.
No.
and Carmen is running around.
So it doesn't have to be a publicly available document?
No, the draft is exempt under the Public Records Act. It's not a disclosable public record.
Oh, there's your answer. Post what's ready.
But anything that you,
Post, it's not-
anything that,
I mean, distribute a draft that's ready.
but let me just clarify that any document that you might attach to it that's not in draft form would become a public document at that time, and have to be mailed out to anyone who's on the list of people who've requested agendas, be mailed to them. So there would be more staff time involved in that as well, because now they'd be sending out things twice to whoever.
Well, I would say that more, I agree, but I think it's worth it. You know, I think it would be a huge benefit to the intelligent operation of this body to add two, you're talking about doubling our time available to research agenda items, to give us a draft on Monday or Tuesday versus waiting till.
However, oftentimes we spend Monday putting it together, and then all day Tuesday making revisions, so that I can meet with the board president, and then after meeting with the board president, we go back and revise it again.
Then you're gonna
And
have to
I know
go.
that
I'm sorry.
I can't ask Carmen to go any faster than what she's already doing, because she is already in a frenzy trying to get it out by Thursday.
Then you're gonna have to play with this a little bit. You're gonna have to play with your dates a little bit on, you're gonna have to get some thought to what you
No,
can do.
then the reality is, the only way that would work by you is we have one meeting a month. Sure, how can you be posting an agenda on Thursday and the meeting following on Tuesday is a different agenda than what was posted? You're asking for the agenda to be posted.
No.
Yes, you are, when there's the
I'm
meetings every 2 weeks.
I'm saying, make some adjustments in your life, the way you schedule
Yeah,
your
the way you're calling for it, we're posting an agenda on Thursday for a meeting on Tuesday. You want it a whole week before that, which means you're gonna be posting the week before of the meeting kind of thing.
The day of the meeting?
Yeah.
How about if
For the
we
next-
change?
No.
No, what she's saying is, say this one right here, March 3rd is when they get ready. You're saying then make this meeting, this agenda
We don't have a meeting every week.
for this.
We
But
have a meeting every
the agenda's prepared the week in between.
But what I'm saying is that, see here, May 3rd, does that say?
Well, they may very well be working on a future agenda before our current
Right,
meeting.
okay, so that means like our meeting's Tuesday and
Well, you're not now,
then
but you
Mitch
could.
and I would sit down on Thursday for the agenda to be posted the next Tuesday for the meeting.
By the way, I just discovered a management problem. And it's like, you know, I've got people that I work with or work for me that just, you give them a task, and I'm not implying you're not, but this is the nature of people. Everybody likes getting a task, completing it, just doing this and moving on. And they may have to modify. They may have a highly developed agenda and a barely developed agenda. You know, it's not ideal from a nice way to work standpoint, but I think that only having 2 business days to review this thing is compelling.
Can I say something? How about this? How about if we take a look at 2 things? One, bring all the questions by Monday morning, or, yeah, by Monday, say you keep it as it is. You post Thursday, you have all your questions to Dr. Hovey by Monday morning.
By 9 o'clock.
Right, okay. He takes it in. And how about if we don't have our meetings on Tuesday and we have them on Wednesdays? That gives us one extra day. You've posted everything that you could post. You've given way more time. You now then, as a board member, I have one extra day to get you still give us our answers by Monday afternoon. You get your answers done. You get your questions Monday morning now instead of Monday afternoon. You come up and you make a priority. You get us the answers by Monday afternoon in a great world. And then we have the rest. We have Monday night, we have all of Tuesday, and then we have all of Wednesday before we have a Wednesday night meeting. So that, I mean, why don't we try something as opposed to going that extreme? Maybe we try this first. I don't know.
I guess, yeah, I don't have a problem. I can't get a clear bead. You know, I don't work with them. You know, I don't develop the agenda with them, so.
Either do I, so.
You know, my life experience is it's pretty unlikely that there's no room in this to tighten this thing up and move it up by 2 days for something that's generated, you know, 18, 19 times a year. You know, my gut is it can be done. I also know, you know, probably all of us have things. I would change what I have going on Wednesday nights now for that. If that's the right answer, I'm open to it. I just, what would be really nice is to maybe get it. Could you guys move a day and we move a day, and then we buy 2 days. If you guys can get the thing submitted by Wednesday, and then we move our meetings to Wednesday, then we'd be buying 2 business days. So then it wouldn't just be all on us.
I don't know whether it's possible to have everything ready to submit and post it by Wednesday night.
I think the process starts as soon as this one ends, right? I mean, that's how you live for board meetings.
Well, by the time we live for them.
I mean, that's kind of
I bet they don't live for
where.
board
But it's a matter of getting all the attachments and everything together. Or if you're moving the meeting, I wasn't hearing Chris say that.
I'm saying we do both. You guys move it up 1 day. I mean, are you really saying that you can't adjust your due dates for all the components in such a manner that you could change your submittal by a day?
Yes.
It all happens in 1 week.
Okay, so let's,
Because
oh, you're saying you couldn't?
cannot adjust it, just because I know we're already running at full speed, trying to get all the paperwork done and get all the attachments. Sometimes we get contracts, the contracts are not complete, they're not accurate, we've got to send them back, we're trying to get it to the board before a certain date.
But isn't that a function of when you tell your staff to prepare certain things? I mean,
But it's a timeliness issue when things are done. And I know, Chris, you don't hear this, but my other 2 districts, we had board meetings on Monday nights. And with this same schedule, we posted on Thursday. And it was assumed that board members would read over the weekend.
I have no issue with reading over the weekend, 0. That is not, reading isn't the issue. Questions, research, follow-up, preparing for a meeting. Preparing for a meeting isn't just reading an agenda and the supporting documentation. It's you know, if you don't have questions, frankly, you shouldn't, you don't belong on the school board, or you just have a perfect staff, which we may have close to a perfect staff, but it's the questions. Reading is easy. My anxiety is not, can I get this read in time? My anxiety is, can I get it read in time? Because you actually limited us to pretty much, it's not that you have 4 days to read it. You better read that sucker you better read it on Thursday night if you've got any significant questions.
But the questions, when you say questions, part of the discussion should be you bringing the questions to interact with your board members at the meeting. Clarification of something that maybe eliminates you needing to do any more questioning is what we're saying, because the questions really are the discussion amongst the board members.
I wish I was slick enough to say, may I point you to policy A3-7 that says our super doesn't like surprises.
Oh.
You know, I mean, which is not one that I particularly pay much attention to, but even the staff would prefer that we don't hit them with potentially embarrassing things.
Sure, but
unnecessarily, if we can give them time
sometimes
to
it's a
answer.
point of clarification as opposed to questions, is what I want to say. Sometimes we just need a point of clarification,
And that
as
can be
opposed
done at
to.
the board meeting.
Yes, yes,
I hear you. I hear you.
yes.
It's just, all of us want to be timely. I mean, I don't, we want to move business along. Anytime you delay, anytime you continue a motion, I don't care what it is, money is spent. Somebody's republishing that, there's work involved. All of us would like to do business in a timely manner for efficiency's sake. So if it's a significant question,
Then if it's significant, it should be discussed at the board table. And then you, as the board member, should have done the research to be able to understand the.
You never have questions that require the input of the staff? Because, boy, you should become a superintendent if that's the case.
Some are points of clarification that once you hear the answer, then it's not necessarily going to be, I
sometimes have questions that literally I think they've missed the boat on considering an entire set of data applicable.
But, and I believe that's what should come to the board table. That's a board meeting question, is what I'm saying.
You could front load them and say, I'm gonna ask this question.
Right,
If we are talking about deciding whether to keep our print shop, and it would absolutely be advantageous to say, can we get this kind of data to support that question before the meeting, which you can also provide to other members, then to show up to the meeting where we're supposed to vote on that, and say, boy, I sure wish I had this data to support the answer to that question.
That's a
Why is
bad
that a
example.
bad example?
Because there's never, that's not a topic that would come up on a board agenda without a big
report
long
behind
discussion.
it, and a
A
major.
charge that is generated from the print shop may then lead you to say, is this print shop necessary?
Look,
But what I'm saying is that that's a bad example, only because that's a discussion that would
okay,
not happen
okay,
right
I
now.
like the example, but you could be talking about whether to support an expensive program, an expensive academic curriculum.
Because you're
program.
making a payment on something that's on that program. What I'm saying is that when the item comes to us, it's usually, what generates your question is usually when you see an item, you see us spending something. Right? Like
Not
print shop.
always. Sometimes it's policy.
Use your print shop
There
example.
could be a policy.
The
on it.
policy belongs at the board table, so.
No.
Well, what I'm saying is that your print shop
It all
example was generated where? Because I never saw on our agenda a discussion about the print shop.
Look, if you are deciding about whether to pass IB, you're deciding whether or not to approve IB, and a case has been made in a recommendation from the staff based upon certain data, and you believe they've entirely missed another aspect of data that would be relevant to that recommendation, that would essentially be tantamount to 6 or 8 hours of a staff member's time. It would be stupid to come, it would be monumentally foolish to not ask the question and come to the board table and say, knowing full well that the preponderance, especially if it was something I was against, and I think the other 4 are for, and I think the answer to the question that might require significant input from staff might help persuade my co-board members, I would like them to have enough time to generate the answer to the question.
And in
Or
that
we
case,
pull it and
something
we
like
vote
that,
on
you
it.
pull the agenda,
Yeah,
you pull the
pull
agenda
the
item
item.
and say, we need additional information.
But
And
something
then-
that-
Mitch, here's where brinksmanship is a reality in controversial items. They're not gonna let me pull an item.
We've
Yeah.
pulled a lot of items over the course.
Of course you've pulled a lot of
You're-
items.
you're giving-
Lynn, if I was against IB and you were all for it, and I had a great idea about how to change your mind, and that idea required significant input from the staff,
But I don't believe that the staff should be one with the input. At that point, if you were that much against it or for it, and you had the idea, you should be bringing that data, in my opinion, as a board member.
we should not have access to full-time paid six-figure staff to run data in areas that they're more expert than we.
Data that belongs to our district is one thing, but information that's general knowledge, that's part of my
Sometimes
fiduciary
it's not general
responsibility as a
knowledge.
board member is to learn about other programs, learn about other districts, what they're doing, reading about what's going on. That's what we bring to the board table. In my opinion, that's what we bring to the board
We
table.
had things happen, Chris, we were doing some boundaries when we opened Beechwood, and we had board members making the drive to see how long it took. We had board members.
Are you
walking
really
in.
gonna sit here and accuse me of not, that this is about me not
No,
wanting
no,
to
no,
work
no,
hard?
no, 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 no.
You know, I mean, I've
What I'm
got
saying is,
an expert
we can
in school
bring-
finance, I've got an expert in,
But we can bring
you're not an
things
expert in
different.
school finance, and you tell me when you have an intern, you're gonna go get your PhD in some aspect of public education so that you can come here and make a brilliant presentation to them and the rest of the board without asking for
I
their
never
assistance.
said I was
Let
coming to
Hilda
make a
finish her
presentation.
comment.
Oh my.
God.
Hilda, finish.
Not all things deal with money, and sometimes what the board, what is recommended to the board is not what the board passes. Example being, when we opened Beechwood, we opened it as a K-7 first year. The recommendation was a K-6. It was the judgment of the board in dialogue without asking questions of the staff. What we wanted to do, there are a lot of questions that we saw on our own which are contrary to staff, which we use our judgment. And my example of board members who drove, it turned out that 4 of the 5 board members drove distances when Beechwood was open because they felt that
If
that
your point
some
there
of
are
the
questions that I
suggestions-
don't need significant input from staff on,
Right.
I don't need significant input from staff on whether to decide a new school's colors are blue and gold or yellow and green.
It's not
I
our
don't need a
choice.
lot of help with that.
It's not our choice, it's their choice.
You understand that?
Yes, I
You know,
guess.
I understand that I don't need to ask Mark to run a study to figure out how long it takes to drive from the district office to Beechwood. But I might need Janet I might call upon her significant expertise on a curriculum item that I'm concerned about. She knows where to go to get the data. She might be able to make 2 phone calls, go to the website, use a program that she has, and run data that I need that would take me a month and a half to figure out how to get. I mean, that's what, staffs are here to support the legislative body.
I
among
agree
other
with that,
things.
but I would say that if those type of issues came up, I don't think that the other board members sitting here are so unreasonable that we would not allow you to pull an item to give us good
Oh,
information.
and there you're drinking. There you're drinking. And I've watched, as is appropriate, I've watched this board, not necessarily these people, but there have been controversial items. People aren't stupid. You got a chance to pass something that you know you want, and this guy doesn't want it, and his whole goal is to delay it and get more info and buy time, and you'll pass. This board is not inclined to, as a show of grace to other board members, to extend more time on something that you've made up your mind on. I mean, that's not realistic. Sometimes, if it's not a critical item, but ID was huge. I mean, it was so huge. We had a board president call a special meeting to reverse her vote. I mean, that was a battle.
And we had threats on our life if we
And
passed it.
what relevance does that have to this discussion?
Well, the relevance is, people have to be responsible enough to know when is the time to ask staff, and how much we do ask staff.
You know what, I think we have plenty of time.
There-
You're right.
No,
We have
I-
plenty, 2 business days is plenty of time, and we should be totally responsible for getting all our own data, and it's perfect. So I'm going crazy from this conversation. I'm telling you guys, yeah, forget it.
Are you,
How realistic is it, staff, that the items that are on the agenda that are really cleaned up, they're perfected, there's not going to be mistakes? How realistic is it to give us a draft of a few items a little early, so that we don't end up with the entire agenda on Thursday?
Let me speak, because I may have put my foot in my mouth before, so I'm going to put the other foot in my mouth now at this point in time. When I said we could do a draft to, I did an inconvenience to the president of the board, because the president of the board has a certain responsibility to determine what does go forward of some of that information. And So when I said that at one point, it was not thinking the fact that I'm taking authority away from, in this case, Lynn.
So she
or whoever
had
was
to come
president.
twice.
Well, I'm not sure with that. I'm just saying that, that was a decision that, the other part is after that, after Lynn and the superintendent had a chance to look at it, it's Tuesday night, okay, because Lynn works, et cetera, or whoever was the board president in this group pretty much now would be in the evening. That means it wouldn't go to Carmen until Wednesday at the earliest. At that point in time, she has a day to clean it up. Well, Carmen doesn't clean it up. She sends it back to Susan, to Mark, to Janet, and in some cases, we have to go back to the school sites, depending on where it's coming from, or the department, to have it cleaned up. Now,
So it's a twofold process.
It's a-
double work.
it is. Now, and I thought it was an easy answer because it seemed like something that we could do, but I apologize, Lynn, because I kind of took the carpet out underneath you. If you look at the schedule that Chris is pointing to, and it does seem like reasonable, gosh, but if you look at it, it takes us 10 days, pretty much, by the time it gets posted, by the time we get it from someone, get it cleaned up, fixed up, adjusted, it goes back and forth numerous times before we get it through cabinet. Through cabinet basically takes all day. Then it goes back to the department that needs to fix it, because even we've done this for how many years? And Chris is right, we're professional staff, but I would say 30% of the items have to go back for some sort of major or minor adjustment.
You know what I don't understand, and I buy everything you said. I mean, I don't, if I lived in, I certainly believe in your sincerity and that you guys are working hard. I've talked to several elected officials about this, and now not a lot of school board members, but city government has human resources, police deals, it's at least as complex as what we do, with more money, more people, more unions, more layers of, they don't just deal with kids and parents, they deal with everybody, and they can't believe that we get our agenda 2 business days before the meetings. So cities seem to be able to get this done. Why can't we? I mean, maybe the answer is there's something special about how data becomes available to school government that's different than city government, but that would shock me.
How long do they get?
They don't, I don't want to.
When did Chris?
I don't know.
I want to go back, Chris, when you were
I'd like you to comment on that.
when you were saying that we all feel confident that we have enough time,
Okay.
I think that you had the wrong interpretation of what I was saying. And one of the reasons I suggested we move our meetings to Wednesday, which probably would mean changing a bylaw and changing the whole world out there, but being flexible, is that would still give them their same days, and you're asking for one more day. I'm looking for simple solutions, not
Oh, I'm not
double
against moving it
drafts.
to Wednesday. I'm not asking, by the way, I'm not asking for one day. I was asking,
I know you
for
want
many
them a long
days.
time.
But I don't buy, I buy the sincerity. I don't practically buy that this staff couldn't figure out how to get this thing done by Wednesday instead of Thursday. And if they got it done by Wednesday instead of Thursday, and we moved ours from Tuesday to Wednesday, that would be 2 days. I also don't understand why assemblymen and city councilmen and supervisors are telling me that they're astounded that a school board staff can only get an agenda to its board members 2 business days before a meeting. I don't
Our
understand.
assembly people don't even read what they vote on for the budget because it
None of
comes
them?
out the night before they vote. Our health care bill in the federal government came out 12 hours before they voted.
There are always
So-
anecdotes. There's always anecdotes.
But
They're
there are
telling
a
me
lot
they
of
get
those
their
things.
agenda and supporting documentation before, more than 2 days before.
How far in advance do they actually get it?
I actually don't. I don't.
Because you're really getting it, if you get it Thursday, you have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, so you're really getting it 5
I will have, look, I'm gonna have mud on my face if I find out they get it Friday for a Tuesday meeting, but there, and I'll be the first one to accept that I should have mud on my face. They're telling me I mean, I don't mind, you know, Sean Nelson's a supervisor, he was stunned that we only got the agenda this far in advance of you know, of our meeting. Anyway,
Well, I would like to come back to Bev's comment. I think it would be helpful if we streamlined the process, and I like Bev's comment about if you could get questions to me before 9 o'clock on Monday, we will work on them in cabinet and make sure you have answers by the end of the day. So I think that might be helpful, because I think that
it's frustrating to me that the only answer to this question is that we change what we do. You know, I mean, I don't mind working a little harder and changing my habits a little bit, but I just don't, I reject that there's just nothing you guys can do to get this agenda out before the Thursday, before the Tuesday meeting. I reject it. Now, maybe I'm the only one that does reject it, and I am accepting that it's harder than I thought. But, I mean, for crying out loud, a day?
Could you meet with the board president on Monday instead of Tuesday? And then that way you then
Corrections
can
aren't
post
passed by
it?
then.
Monday we need most of the day going through it and preparing it, which means it then has to be cleaned up and put together so that I can meet with the board president on Tuesday.
We forget they have other jobs too.
And then after Tuesday,
Other
then
responsibilities.
it
Well,
goes
and
back
I
to the
guess
department.
Chris's point is that maybe then you just, instead of Monday, you do it on Friday. I just think, you know, being that we're, you know, I understand the lack of time to digest answers to questions. And
For
maybe
them,
doing the
not for
Wednesday
me.
instead of or Wednesday instead of the Tuesday, you know, as a pilot. I mean, maybe we try something like that. I don't know. I mean, I think that for me, if I can get a commitment from you guys that yes, you're gonna give me the answers by Monday afternoon, then at least I have a reasonable amount of time. Because again, you get an answer and then you've got to read it and process it. And for some of those, I mean, I haven't been on the board as long as Hilda and Lynn. They can process things a little faster just because it's easier for them. I can process things sometimes a little faster than Chris and Janny because I've been there longer than they have, but still they're new coming into this. Me, 4 years ago coming into it, I can understand. You know, you need time to understand what the lingo is and understand why that is, and so sometimes.
I appreciate that. I just want to make crystal clear, this has nothing to do with my ability to digest it. It has only
It's
to
the
do,
follow-up questions.
It
and
has
follow-
only to do with how comprehensive of questions I can ask and likely get answers for. That's all it has to do. That's it. And I'll tell you another thing.
And those items you pull, you wait, and you-
Mitch doesn't like email. He likes, you know, when you ask a lot of hard questions that have a potential for controversy, he doesn't want, he likes you to come in and sit down and you gotta schedule a meeting and it's, you know, he doesn't like that digital file going out into the world and which I am not particularly fond of, but
But that's part of that whole transparency thing too. I mean, that's.
Oh, exactly. That's
I don't know if
why
I'm gonna
That's why it
send you
should
that
be brought up
answers.
at the meeting. I mean, some of the
I
questions.
don't even know what to do with that one. I don't even know what to do with that comment. I don't even know what to do with it. It's just.
So what do we decide?
Get your answers to the cabinet to Mitch by Monday morning. Your questions, your points of clarification, because I really think questions is the wrong term. It's points of clarification that you need before,
Well,
on Monday morning.
And then how about then if we say if there is an item on there that Chris or Janny or I or anyone up here feels like they need a little bit more information on and it hasn't been done, if they would like to pull it and ask that it be.
Well, personally, I
researched
think
over
if that
the-
much information needs to be provided, it needs to come to the meeting. It needs to be presented
And
at
then
the meeting.
Pull it at the meeting, so you
And
pull it.
and that you're giving the cabinet the time to pull together information that they can gather to present as part of the action item.
And that's what I'm saying.
If there's that much information that's needed for you to make a
Well,
decision,
they go beyond
then
that.
it should be coming to the meeting as a point
It all
of, for the
comes to the
public to
meeting.
hear it.
Oh, no, and
And by the way, the data you
So they
get-
don't necessarily have to answer you as much as you're giving them,
Bring them
I want
information.
this information at this
Absolutely.
meeting.
Well, that's fine. They can bring it to the meeting.
that's-
Although then you don't have to, if you question their answer, which some of us are wont to do, there's no time before a vote's in order.
Well, that makes it harder for them, because then we wait until this meeting to even bring it up, then we're asking questions that may not have immediate answers.
And if that much,
and then
we,
you hold it over.
over the years, when things have been brought forth and we've questioned something, we have pulled it. We have pulled it, we have delayed the action on the item so that further investigation could occur and further information.
You know, with all
can
due
happen. And that's
respect,
the purpose of the meeting.
as a person that I've never seen oppose staff, ever, since I've been here, very easy to take that position. When you always agree with staff.
I do not always agree with
When you
that.
do since I've been here. So, of course, I mean, it's all real easy when you always agree with the staff. I don't always agree with the staff. I think there's significant issues in public education and some in this district. I hugely question some things.
But I believe that belongs at the board table, not for you to hold a one-on-one discussion.
What
with
I'm
them.
talking about has nothing to do with not bringing it to the board table. Zero. It has to do with being a person trying to educate himself and get all necessary data to make good decisions before the meeting, and then including discussion within the meeting. This silly notion that, it's like, we should just come here like zombies until the meeting and then stick our heads down because it all should be at the meeting? You don't do any research before the meeting?
That's what I said we should be doing, and you're telling me that the cabinet should be doing the research.
Excuse me.
I did some checking for you, some of the information.
Mark, can you toss your nitro over there, please?
What's that?
Can you toss your nitro
Very,
over there?
very good today.
Yeah.
The County Board of Supervisors has theirs posted Wednesday morning for their Tuesday morning meeting, so they have the exact same time as we have. So I don't know if you talked with the Orange County, but theirs is exactly the same as ours.
The supervisors?
The Orange County Board of
So
Supervisors.
Sean must just not read his.
It's posted
Why?
Wednesday. It's posted
He set you under the bus. You set him under the bus.
I just
Talking to
wanted
show?
Yeah, Sean.
I just wanted to let you know so that there wasn't any misinformation, but they're posted Wednesday morning, and their meeting is Tuesday morning. It's the same amount of business time as we have now. Not that that's good or bad.
No, hey, you know what? It's fair point. It's fair point. If I get called to the mat, I gotta live with it. Live by the sword, die by the sword. I will be calling Sean after this meeting. I'm gonna check out what the city council does.
Well, that's what's on the website.
No, that's the supervisor.
After this, after we come to some little conclusion on what we're gonna do, I am going to move to recess for 5 minutes so that we that might have to take a potty break can do that without missing discussion. I'm moving that, so majority,
No debate.
No debate. I need a second though.
That's a word to you. That's a word to you.
I second it.
Need a majority vote.
Majority vote?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll
So are we taking it now, or do?
I don't mind finishing this discussion, but I
How
didn't want
about
to
if-
start the next one.
How about if we start with getting me the questions before 9 o'clock on Monday, and we will do our very best.
I will do my best, but I'm not gonna commit that I won't ask you a question after that. I'll do my best, but,
And could we get a
a
commitment?
question might
by
occur to me
Thursday
later than
morning?
that.
Try and get the
We'll do
agenda
the-
by Thursday morning? I mean,
We'll do the very best that we can. On some of the agendas are shorter, yes. Other agendas that are
I
longer.
say you go out there and then you charge staff with the thing that it's not your fault, it's ours, and we're the ones that are driving it, and not you, and so.
But again, part of it is getting the attachments
Well-
that we're needing to attach.
And maybe
So-
we need to make sure that all units or all staff sites or all school sites understand that we truly need that stuff so that we can do our job. And it's important to us to be able to do our job well, and if they could please help us in this process by getting their stuff earlier. I would need
And if
that.
we get it to you by Thursday in the morning, will you be looking at it Thursday, or
It's
is
on the
it?
day.
But is Thursday morning before noon? If you get it, is that gonna make a difference?
Yes. It'll make a difference for me.
Depends. I don't know what I'm gonna be doing on Thursday from
But then it's my
Actually, to be
responsibility.
honest, for me, probably not much.
But then it's my
Because
responsibility.
I'm usually not done working on a Thursday until Thursday night anyway.
That's my point. So if you get it Thursday morning, this
Yeah. I
between
mean,
Thursday morning and Thursday night, but
yeah.
let us see what we can do to get it out a little quicker. And we'll work with staff. And like I said, some of the agendas that are shorter, we probably can do something.
And then we'll get our questions to you guys, and you'll get us an answer by
We will
Monday
do-
afternoon or Monday night.
I'm like Chris, I will do my best to get.
Because then that way it gives us, I mean, having an answer on Tuesday morning for a Tuesday night meeting,
Right.
for me it's hard, because I never get to read I don't get to read the answers.
But
Once I get here.
But if it's a Monday, you.
Then I can.
It is helpful though if you send them all to me, because then we've got, because some of you are asking the same questions, then I can get it to the cabinet, and then we can get you answers. So we've been pretty good about trying to get cabinet done by around noonish or so. That
Okay,
gives us that.
cabinet will be faster.
Really?
Our
Okay.
cabinet time is cherishable.
Okay, so does that mean we can recess now?
Yes.
For 5 minutes, or you, Chair?
Oh, yeah. I don't, it's a discussion meeting. It's not,
Recess.
yeah, we're recessed.
7:35.
Yeah, till 7:40. Up front, maybe not present, but at least up front. We'll move back into open session.
7:45.
And we're going to announce that it's been determined that the Fullerton City Council gives their agendas Thursday afternoon as a point of reference, and their meetings happen to be Tuesday evenings, and I believe they even start an hour or two ahead of us with some of their closed session and public stuff they do,
So I will
so.
say for the record that all Chris's friends have thrown money.
They have also admitted this. I want to say something. My wife will tell me that giving an explanation or an apology negates it, but my frustration in this conversation is that I feel like I'm debating whether it would be valuable to get the agenda earlier, and that made me frustrated, but I owe Lynn and Hilda huge apologies. I have a problem with getting personal when I get frustrated, and I need to work on that, and I'm very sorry that I got personal, and I've got to stop condemning people for ideas that I disagree with, and I'm very sorry.
And you're forgiven.
Apology accepted. So, now that we have a clear timeline on our agenda production, and all of you in the audience have been educated on the process, the next item for discussion has to do with legal counsel attendance at our board meetings, and we're very grateful that tonight's legal counsel is coming to us for free, which is always a good thing.
Which I'm guessing won't happen then.
Right.
It's mine.
For free. She's though thinking, how am I gonna turn this into a benefit for me back at the office?
I get out of this.
Yeah. So, legal counsel
Yeah.
doesn't come cheap.
How much would it cost?
Dr. Hubby.
If we went with private counsel, which is, I did talk to OCDE, and they said they would come once in a while to support a meeting such as this, but to come for every board meeting, at a minimum, it would be $300 a night.
So, what would that buy us, 2 hours or 1 hour?
Well, and one of the law firms said that it would be $300 to attend both the closed session and the open session. It's a flat rate. Another law firm said it would be $350 to attend the closed and open session. And then 2 other firms bill for actual time. One of them bills from the time they leave their house to the time they go home. So that,
Are the 350 and the 300 firms that have strong reputations, I would assume?
yes, those are ones that we went to, or ones that we typically work with.
Did you say who they are?
Parker Covert,
Is which one?
which is the one with Dave Larson.
Right, and what do they charge?
Excuse me,
That's
Lieutenant Tucker is with Dave Larson, I'm sorry.
And how
I'm
many
sorry,
meetings do we have
Parker
a year?
Covert is $300.
How many meetings do we have a year?
About 18 to 20 meetings per year.
How much is the other one?
Rattan and Tucker bills for actual time, and they're $235 an hour. And they bill from the time they leave the door to the time. That's Dave Larson.
That's Dave Larson.
Okay, thank you.
It is my personal opinion that it's worth $6,000 a year to have an attorney at these meetings. I think it's incredibly valuable. I found it incredibly valuable tonight.
And the two that, who's the 300, Parker and Covert?
Parker Covert said it was $300 for, they would come and join us.
And is that something that we've already dealt with?
Yes.
For us? I mean, have we had a
Cindy
relationship?
Young is with
Yeah,
Parker
Cindy
Covert. She may not be the first one to come to the firm, they have several lawyers.
But she's come to things in the past over the years.
And she used to represent us with child welfare and
Well, I thought
attendance.
that she was a.
Steve
special-
Martinez is the person I dealt with for a long time from Parker and Covert.
And they're not a special, I thought they were more of a specialized firm for other things other than this kind of arena.
No,
No?
they have a large portion that deal with education law.
And then the other one for 350?
That's Maggie Chidester, and we've worked with her on many occasions. And the last one is Berryman, DC, and they bill for actual time, $2.20 an hour.
I think that, I'm amazed at that flat rate. That's $350 for closed and open session?
Yeah.
300.
They may be
One's
surprised
three-
when they go,
Yeah.
oh, you meant.
One's the Chidester's $350, Rattan Tucker, I'm sorry, Parker Covert was $300.
I'll tell you, I would give up the money from our stipends to pay for it. I think $100 each out of our stipend a month would do it. It's just, you know, I don't want to be I'm not volunteering it, but if the board wants to do that, I'll do it. You know, I hate to lay this on the taxpayers and children, but it's, frankly, it makes it takes some burden off me, because I have a lot of legal questions going into the meeting that are a concern to me, knowing that an attorney's here. It saves me time personally. So I think it's super valuable.
At first, when I thought about it, I thought no, because of the money, and I didn't feel it was necessary. But the more I think about it, the more I feel both ways. I feel like it is nice to have someone here that can maybe stop a conversation from going somewhere where we don't want it to go, because it's on, you know, thin ice. We might be getting, you know, I might be opening ourselves up to something if we say this, and that person could then stop that from happening immediately and redirect the conversation. I mean, that's something good. I think it just provides us with the stability of having someone there that knows exactly what can and cannot be said up here. So I'm open to this one. At first I wasn't, but now I'm more open to it than I was before. That's my opinion.
Mike and I was open to it, and I was more focused in having legal counsel with meetings that had a little more hot spots to it, maybe knowing what the agenda is and having legal there when you knew that there were going to be issues. Because sometimes the agenda is so quick, and like the last agenda that we had, and we
$300
didn't
for
even
that.
we didn't have closed session.
Yeah.
So that was my thought, was to bring in legal counsel when we had a heavy controversial agenda, but sometimes we don't know where it goes.
Sometimes we don't know, yeah, where the discussion will go.
This is a bargain. I mean, I assume that, you know, realistically, you'd be talking $20,000 a year, you know, with hours, you know, for $6,000, $300 for, you know, average of 3 hours of meeting. I assume they're doing it because they're hoping it leads to more business. I don't know why they do it, but they're hoping that if they're the ones that were here when the problem occurred, they get that business.
Well, we do use them on other occasions, so
Yeah,
that's
it's a
probably
courtesy,
why.
frankly, it's to discount courtesy because we're their client. So it's, you know, we should take advantage of it.
So we have 3 people right off the bat, and I like the idea also. So should that need to be agendized
Yes.
to?
We'd have to bring a contract.
You'd have to bring it back. We already are contracted with them.
So do we put it on the agenda to vote on
You
it?
can, yeah, you'd have to do that, so.
So I'd like to make a motion to put the concept of having legal counsel attend our board meetings as the superintendent deems they would be relevant. In other words, if we're going to have an hour meeting, not at that. So So there'd be a couple of times.
I would heavily opt to having them. I mean, if we knew we were talking about
Well, I need a
colors
second.
and which songs to pick and stuff like that, maybe not, but.
Well, you never know where that's gonna go though.
But like last meeting, there was no closed session and.
It was 25 minutes.
But that's the chance you take if you want someone at every board meeting.
You just have to.
But it evens out because those
Consistency,
6-hour ones,
Right.
they're here.
If you have them here every time, then they get to know our personalities, they get to know the direction that we
Yeah,
want,
that's
so,
As long as the same person comes, you make it a different person.
well, usually it is.
Yeah, we'll try to get the same
Yeah.
person, I think.
And I would suggest going with I mean, it seems like they're all very reputable, we have no qualms because we use all three of them, I would go with the cheapest one.
I would agree. I would initially agree with that. You know, I hope the board stays open if we don't like somebody that we quietly
Well,
change.
if it doesn't work out, then we can easily change it.
We're not typically pressing legal boundaries here. I mean, you just want somebody who's familiar with education law, you know.
So what does the board want me to bring back, put it on the agenda with a
Yeah, I can-
specific,
yeah.
with a specific
It
person?
doesn't have a second
I'll second it.
Oh,
Okay, so I'll come back to the board with a recommendation.
Contract.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I know we have a contract with them, but we're contracting for specific
Right.
dates, so.
Whatever you need to do to make it
I'll go
happen.
back, we'll look
And with
into
a
it.
different kind of expertise, I mean, the
Yeah.
expertise of someone that
Yeah,
knows Robert schools or whatever.
we'll follow.
That sounds good.
Okay, so we'll bring it back up.
I think that's a great point, is we want somebody in particular who can be our, you know, the chair ultimately has more decision-making authority, I suppose, but that is knowledgeable in Robert's rules, or
Point of clarification.
Whatever it's called.
Okay. So you want legal counsel and preferably with someone who really knows the Robert's Rules of Order.
But we don't wanna have to pay for Dave Larson because he's expensive.
I get
He's
that.
is he the whole, that's the company that's from,
Rattan Tucker.
yeah.
Okay.
I like him, I would.
Okay, so then the last item is item 6, and we do have 2 request to speak forms. I don't know if the board would like to speak first or allow the public to speak first. Bring the public up first, I've heard,
I frankly would defer to the public if they prefer to hear what we have to say first. I don't, you know, it's a big issue, and I'm real pro letting people speak, so whatever they want to do.
It's my perspective.
Is Carla even here?
She left me her.
Oh, okay, because it's
speech.
Carla and
That's
Diamond
acceptable.
that have something to say, so,
May I read Carla's?
yes. I just realized that Carla wasn't here.
May I ask a
She has to
question?
go to an event.
Yes,
Did-
she had to
did
go
you-
to an event.
Hold on,
Yes.
did you set any criteria for the length of time for these discussions at all? Usually we read a statement.
It's on here.
I saw it.
Oh,
the thing
based
was-
on what we see and the,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Unless you read it really
Very good.
slow.
If I had
30
a long
seconds.
stand, then
She's
we'll-
not a great teacher, she knows how to read.
No pressure, right?
No.
Yes, begin?
Yes.
Last spring, Fullerton School District began a process that would greatly change the way the district office and the teachers' union accomplished business. The ABC School District invited us to an institute which emphasized working together in a partnership between these two groups. At that time, we agreed to work on clear communication and developing a feeling of mutual respect and trust, both of which are essential to an effective partnership. As Dr. Hovey and I, meaning Carla, meet together, our conversations are always geared to making Fullerton School District a better working environment, which in turn makes student achievement better. Last week, Hilda Sugarman shared with me an article about how over 1/3 of the states are using test scores as a means of evaluating teachers, and also a component of earning tenure. While most teachers see relevance in including this information as a part of the process, it is by no means an end in itself, and should include consideration of student attributes, working environment, and many other multiple measures. In our district, for several years, we have been emphasizing PLCs and teachers collaborating and sharing best practices to benefit student learning. I cannot see why, considering the work we've been doing with the evaluation task force, partnership work, and improved communication, we would move into an environment that is completely counter to those efforts. By comparing teachers using undeclared means, all I can see this encouraging is less collaboration, more selfish keeping practices to oneself, and possibly more divisive measures that will allow one teacher to prevail over another. Having teachers competing against each other can certainly not be what is best for kids, and I think serious evaluation should take place before such a practice is implemented. Currently, our district is working on a productive and positive track. I would like to continue to see the value in those efforts and maintain our focus as colleagues together, working towards the ends of increasing student achievement and continuing the collaborative and constructive work we have been experiencing well on into the future.
Thank you. And Dottie Pendleton has some public comments for us too.
Rip DeFore states that educators who are building a professional learning community recognize that they must work together to achieve their collective purpose of learning for all. Therefore, they create structures to promote a collaborative culture. At our school sites on a daily basis, educators evaluate data collected informally through assignments and classroom assessments. Formal data is analyzed through benchmarks and state testing. During weekly PLC meetings, grade levels pore over data to determine who is making progress and who is not. Intervention plans are put into place to address all of the students' needs. We now think of the students not as mine or yours, but as all of ours. Over the course of any given day, a student may have more than one teacher depending on what skills that child needs to have reinforced. It would be difficult to determine which individual teacher gets credit for that child's success. Over the past 4 to 5 years, I've seen a definite shift in attitude as management and teachers work together to improve the educational program that we provide for our children. We have teachers and management attending Marzano training together. The Superintendent's Evaluation Task Force is made up of representatives from both groups representing all school sites and the district office. We are working and bargaining to make the best use of our staff development time. We are already working together to create a fair and meaningful evaluation process. Ranking one teacher against another or a group of teachers against another group fosters a climate of distrust and is divisive. It tears apart the collaborative spirit that is working so well to make Fullerton schools great.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll open it up to the board.
I want to say the majority of everything that the two speakers said, Carla said, I agree with most of it. I absolutely agree that collaboration is better than ranking. I actually think that ranking is probably one of the lesser effective methods to create a positive culture of people working together and trying to help each other. I agree with all that. There's a problem. And the problem is that California Teachers Association and National Education Association and other teachers unions across this country have been spectacularly successful at preventing a very basic tenet of management from occurring. And that is the ability to get rid of the bottom performers. It is immeasurably difficult and expensive to do that in our nation, in our state, and in our district. There are states in this country that have not terminated a teacher for a cause related to performance, states, in years. And so I'm forced to balance one problem with another. And I have a problem in this district. We have 600 teachers. And by the way, you know, what I think Carla's letter said by undeclared means. Obviously, ranking wouldn't go forward under undeclared means. Do I maximize collaboration at the expense of leaving? And I'll just say it, we have bad teachers. We have way more great ones, but we have bad
bad teachers. We have bad teachers in the classroom today that are conceivably even potentially ruining children's lives. That they are, if the and I know of one. I know of one. I know that there are, I don't know how many, 25, 30 kids in one teacher's classroom that this entire year will be a complete lost cause for those children. And it is a crime that we are committing on the children of this school district and the taxpayers of Fullerton in allowing that to occur. We have a limited ability to do anything about it. But one thing that we can at least, if Hilda sends lots of good articles, and I think I send occasionally good articles, and other people send good articles, about this issue of states and districts trying to get rid of bad teachers. But what's going to change the hearts of the voters of Fullerton and the hearts of the voters of this state and this nation to begin to have the courage to stop saying what I hear from everybody. It's, oh, well, the teachers union is powerful. Nothing you do. We aren't putting forth to our parents and voters that there is a bottom, that we have bad teachers. And I don't want to say that at the exclusion of bragging about, rewarding, applauding our good ones. I wish that the law, if the law were such that if every one of these experts concluded after 6 or 8 months of evaluation that a teacher was literally hurting children, that we could have a few meetings, we could take 6 months notes, we could engage in a couple of attempts to rectify or improve, cost us 20 or 30 grand to do it, but at the end of the day, Janet says to me, yeah, Chris, in my opinion, this very nice person has no ability to teach children, and we're hurting children leaving that person in the classroom. And then we could terminate that person. If that were possible, I would be fighting against this idea. But it's not possible. As Mark Douglas educated me, in California, it takes an average of 3 years and $250,000, $250,000 to take a teacher that's hurting children out of the classroom and get them out of our district. And that is irrational. It is irrational. It is criminal. And with all due respect to good teachers, it is criminal that the CTA has advocated for policy and law that has led to that circumstance. And frankly, if I were a teacher, I would have difficulty sleeping at night for not publicly coming out and opposing those circumstances loudly. And so I got a problem. Stanford study says that in doing comparative, just on testing, for whatever testing is worth, which is not everything, you get, if America fired the bottom 7% of its teachers, that we would launch overnight back to second place amongst industrialized nations in testing in math, science, and reading. Overnight. Can't do it. I believe it was Iowa. I mean, it had been 7 years since the whole state had fired a teacher. So in the hope of not just grandstanding, and I'm not grandstanding for me, because I just apologize, and frankly, I kind of made a jerk out of myself earlier in the night, so I'm not doing a very good job for myself in grandstanding of my statesman-like skills. But I do want to put before people in Fullerton that we've got some bad teachers. So I would ask of our staff and our attorney, would it even be legal? Would it be legal to ask the staff as a human resource function to identify by some means that they would determine? And I would put it to them. I don't know what a good teacher, I mean, I'm sure I can look at a teacher that's so horrific and know that's a bad teacher, but I'm not an expert at what a good teacher is and what a bad teacher is. It's not my expertise. But I know statistics tells me we got it. And I would ask, is it legal for the staff to simply identify the bottom 10% of teachers by some methodology. I would even accept that we can't be given that list. I am willing to accept such a tiny drop in the bucket of moving toward trying to make it less of a nightmare to save a child's life. That I would accept the tiny step of just knowing that they did it. And they look at us and say, here's the method we used, and we have a list we can't show you because it's a human resource matter, but we have identified our bottom 10%. Because I believe it would change their hearts. Because I don't believe they've ever done that. I think they identify some of them, but they've never gone on a mission to actually say, we've got a bottom that we wish we could get rid of, and we're going to identify it. I don't know what would come of it, but I think the exercise would be extremely valuable, and I think it would be extremely valuable to the children of Fullerton and this state and this nation to know that our school district at least chose a method to identify our bottom 10%. We could then talk about what, if anything, we can do about it. I will fully acknowledge, in the short term, probably not much. Probably not much. But I would be greatly comforted as a school board member knowing that my staff, they know, and they know for not, and I won't, not, well, we know who that is, but no, I want to know, who are they? You have a list, there's the, the bottom, whatever 10% is, 60, whatever it is. So, I don't know what support I might get, but this is the biggest problem in public education, and I understand, and I know I'm going to get all the speeches about our evaluation method and working together and all this, but what's not going to come out of that, what will not come out of that, is specifically pointing to our identified, named bottom.
Well, we have PAR, so we do have people that have been identified.
We have not identified the bottom 10%.
But those are the ones that most likely are at the bottom.
Okay.
I think about this and I think, first of all, you have to evaluate and you have to know what a good teacher is. Until you can come to some conclusion and some agreement on what is a good teacher, how do you even start a process like this? And I would assume that once you identify what a good teacher is, which I think that's what this process is starting, when we're evaluating what is a good, what are the characteristics, what are good teachers, what are good principals, and then we're going to be able to evaluate that. So from this process, you're going to then naturally have, when you're evaluating people, you're getting up here and you might be needing some help down here. So I think the process is going to happen. I worry going into something like this without having identified what is, because my perception of what a good teacher is and what your perception of a good teacher is completely different. My children had teachers in their schools that have been identified by parents as the worst teachers you possibly could ever have. My kids have had those teachers, and I can tell you one of those teachers was the most successful with one of my children. On the other hand, you have that same thing, oh, that's the best teacher, and my kids get nothing. So I think that, there's a lot of perception out there on what a good teacher is and what a bad teacher is, and we have to identify that first. I don't want to get into a situation where you're using all this data because you think it's the right data to use. And again, when you have shared students, that's hard to judge and it's hard to, I think, measure a child's performance. You have to take credit where credit's due. It's a collaboration. We're all teaching this kid, and so their test scores are up here. And so how do you say what teacher had the most influence to be able to get that child to test like that.
I
So
got a question for you.
I can try and answer.
Yeah, stipulating that if you had 3 teams of expert evaluators, stipulating that bottom 10% would have a variance between the 3 teams. Wouldn't you bet that the substantive core of that bottom 10% evaluated by 3, actually, I'm not going to ask you, I'm going to ask Mark. If you picked the 15 smartest educators you've ever met in your life, and you created 3 teams of 5, and you charge them with going out, they can do anything they want, evaluate data, interview our teachers, observe our teachers, they can spend 6 months doing it, they can come up with their own system. And they identified our bottom, after working tirelessly for 6 months, these 3 teams identified their bottom 10% of our district. How dissimilar would you predict that those 3 core groups of people would be? And I actually can't know. But what would your best guess? Do you think that they'd be 70 or 80% similar people?
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, you can
Because
punt.
what I'm going to say, now here's my punt. They may be able to say what good teaching looks like, but they wouldn't all agree what that is. And,
for sure.
And so even with them deciding what good teaching looked like, I don't know that they would be able to come up with what a good teacher it is.
Let me reverse it. Let's say their job was to identify our 10% of our best.
Mm-hmm.
You think those 3 groups would look very similar?
I don't think they would have, for the same purpose and the same reason. They can identify what good teaching is, but as Beth pointed out, a teacher is different for every student that addresses them. And so, let me put it in a different term, and you'll criticize me in a second, and that'll be okay. My son's all-star soccer team. He was probably the bottom 10% on that soccer team. Thing is, it was an all-star soccer team, and so he was still better than most of the other players and all the other teams. And so you can always find a bottom to something, but that doesn't make them less or better. It's all in what you compare. And the other part, soccer is a pretty easy one because you're going to produce it by. Yeah, yeah. And teaching has probably 1,000 nuances or more that you have to judge. And it's not just a relationship with the child, it's how you bring that question forward, how you bring that project forward. And I know the teacher you're thinking, well, I'm assuming I know the teacher you're thinking of, and yet I could show you test scores from that teacher that you're concerned with that equaled, if not better, the rest of the people in that grade level's test scores. And I'm not going to hear it ever say from my group or anyone else that test scores are actually the measure, because they're not.
Do you think it's a problem?
I have a hard time.
Do you think it's a problem how difficult it is to terminate?
You acknowledge that we have teachers that you would terminate if you could do it.
That's a different question. Do I believe that we have a system that makes it very difficult to move a teacher to release? Yes, I
Do you
believe
think
that's
it's a problem how difficult and expensive it is to remove a poor performing teacher?
Do I think it's a problem? Honestly, I believe that there could be a more efficient way of getting to the end.
Do you wish it were easier to terminate a poor performing teacher and less expensive?
I would like to stop these questions.
That's hard.
Chris?
I don't think it's hard.
Chris, but he's not gonna.
Actually, I think he likes talking about this stuff.
Well, the other side is, as
Yeah.
an employer, and I'm gonna take a stance of the district or of the employer. An employer has money invested in any employee that they hire. And they usually are hiring from the standpoint of, I've brought in what I feel is the best fit for that job. And every time you terminate, there's more money that has to be spent to retrain. There's time lost. I mean, as you bring in new and inexperienced, you lose time. So just because you think this person is bad, who you replace with may not be up to speed for 2 years. So I'm just saying, from the employer standpoint, the goal is not necessarily to turn over staff because of the time lost in doing
But
it.
we're not making widgets. You know,
We're-
I mean,
we're
if you've got an employee that makes widgets at a fraction of the speed.
But
of
we
it,
spend
we're
money on
destroying-
training, we
in
spend,
the case of a bad teacher, we're destroying children's lives.
but from the context of what Mark just said, so many other influences come into that 1 year. So to say that 1 year with a teacher that is not the best fit for your child is not destroying a life, is setting them forward or backwards depending on the support from home. So-
I don't believe that, by the way, I didn't recommend that we fire them on 10%. I just recommend that we, and I would be satisfied if we did the bottom 3%. Just the worst of the worst of the worst. In fact, maybe that's the right recommendation.
Maybe you say you identify the top 90%.
Let's identify the top 97%. That's a great idea. It's a great idea. If that's more palatable, identify the top 97%.
But I
Well,
think
it's the
that,
same thing.
it's the same thing. And there's,
Education seems to be into flowery words.
within our district, we have programs in place that have helped to identify that bottom. And that's why we have PARs and bits of.
There's a
and other
difference
things.
between identifying people that need help and actually specifically, this is what organizations do that need to pare down and get better. You have quoted and referred to the book Good to Great many times, several times, from the days. Half of Good to Great, in fact, exactly, a major component of Good to Great is getting rid of the bottom. It's a major component. And public education does not have the courage to look at that natural, necessary component of making it. You want to get the best on the bus, and you want to get rid of the bottom. You're constantly feeding the top, and you get rid of the bottom. And that's, because we're always talking about wanting to be the best, and wanting to be excellent. So forget, your analogy, accept it. Your son's bottom 10 of the top 10. But do we not want to get better? A major component of getting better is getting rid of the bottom.
Chris, there's a lot of things as we're talking about that go through my mind
Yep.
on this subject. And I think picking a percent, 10%, 5% or whatever is the wrong way to go. I think what we're really looking at is making sure that every one of our students that comes to our schools in Fullerton receives the best of education possible. And that's exactly what we are doing. Do I like the process of the ed code? No, I don't like the process of the ed code. I agree with you there. But what we are doing is we are changing how we evaluate. And to assume we're not taking action on those teachers that are not as effective is wrong, because we do take action. We do work with them. Our principals work with those teachers. And in this district, we will work, and our goal is to try to help them become better teachers. However, if they don't become better teachers, then there's a process in place that we follow. And one of the things that we're using, and one of the things that is going to benefit this district and our kids, is the evaluation process we've got going now. To relook at it, because we've all agreed that the evaluation process we've had for place for years and years and years has not been very meaningful. So that's why we're looking to change it. And one of the first conversations we had, comes back to Bev's thought, is what really is an effective teacher and what really is an effective principal. We need to identify those characteristics. And now that we've looked at those things and we've had discussions about what are effective teachers, now we're putting in place an evaluation system that allows us to do just that.
Can you explain to me in your career's experience what the term musical chairs means in public education?
Musical chairs mean you just move people around.
And why would you do such a thing?
Why would I do such a thing?
Well, maybe you really aren't following me. I've had a dozen principals in this district, who I could name if I chose, acknowledge to me that the best way for them to get rid of a bad teacher is to move that teacher to another school.
Shame on those principals.
Well, you know what? Shame on us.
And perhaps that was a practice of long ago.
In fact, I reject shame on us.
It is not a practice at this point.
You know what?
It's not a practice.
We ask a principal to do the best for his students, And if the best thing that principal can do for his students is get that teacher out of that school, and the best way for him to not hurt his kids and to put under his charge is to get that teacher out of his school through musical chairs, you know what, I applaud the guy. I applaud him. You know, who I don't applaud is us, who no one at this table has acknowledged that we have a bottom that's hurting kids. Maybe somebody will.
I want to raise just one legal issue just for your consideration, which is that if you create this list of bottom people, and I heard you say earlier that you thought it would somehow be in secret, or this would not be something that would ever be released to even to the board, and I'm just questioning whether that really would be lawful, because I mean, the Public Records Act, the assumption is that any document that's created is a public record, and that's always the presumption, and then you move away from that and look at, well, what are the very specific exemptions to that? And the only specific exemption that might even arguably apply here would be the section that refers to personnel files, the disclosure of which would result in an invasion of personal privacy. And it's not clear to me that that would win the day. And so my guess is that a plaintiff could go to court and say, you know, we believe that this is in the greatest of public interest for us to know who's on this list. And I would see a judge possibly siding with the plaintiffs in that case and releasing this. And then you have a list in your district of the 10%, you know, worst teachers, and what are you going to do then?
Well, I will tell you two things. I think it's a great point, and I'm wondering to the degree to which the answer might be that there's no list. That they simply strive to in 60 files indicate that this person's been, and that maybe that's not different. Unfortunately, I would cheer on that list ultimately being released. However, in order to have any prayer, which I don't think I do have any prayer, in order to have any prayer of winning the day on having this happen, I know that it's going to be a necessary component to try to navigate to a situation where that's unlikely to happen. Because that would be, I would vote, if it were legal, I'd vote to do a list and release it. You know, but there would a lot of consideration to how that list is done would be, I would ultimately just charge them with doing it. For them, I would charge my staff with coming up with the methodology. They're the experts, I'm not. But it's a great point. I think it's out, you know, I know there are definitely major legal considerations here.
But isn't the new or the upcoming evaluation process ultimately going to do that? It's going to recognize or show the weak teachers?
I don't think that's what
it's not a list, we don't need a list, it's going to recognize.
What it's going to do is it's going to show where a teacher can improve their professional skills and thereby improve their skill base. Now, again, I'll use the soccer team as the example. It's going to show my son that maybe he can cut stronger on his left foot than his right foot, or whatever the case may be, to score better. Okay? But it's not going to show that he should be off that soccer team.
No, but ultimately, it'll go through a process and then go into par, and it moves to a point where...
We have those processes now. So
yes.
the processes don't change. We still have people who are either voluntarily in par, which has nothing to do with their performance necessarily, and there are people who are in a mandatory par situation. Again, following the education code on how they get there.
And can you have a teacher that is at the needs improvement level that refuses par?
Well, only if they're not unsatisfactory.
If they're unsatisfactory, it's mandatory.
If in fact they're not evaluated as an unsatisfactory. I mean, if you take Chris's example that the principal decides not to give them a negative evaluation and decides to move them, then obviously they're not going to go into any par situation because their evaluator has chosen not to evaluate
Or
them
remove the principal with the
effectively.
teacher.
Will the new evaluation process help with that if they move? At least they have something in their file, they don't start from scratch?
Depends on if that
Absolutely.
principal does
Yeah.
it, though.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to come back to is the other part of the problem is if we are not properly evaluating our teachers and we are simply moving them, then shame on us. And that should not be taking place. And that's another purpose of the whole evaluation process, because for many years we have had an inconsistent process in place. We had some doing this, some doing that, and the whole process was really not understood. So by having the discussions we're having, that's why we've not only talked about what makes for an effective teacher, but what makes for an effective principal. And if we're not doing our job, then I need to be working with those principals, because either they need to do the job so that we improve learning for students, or they no longer need to be a leader in our schools.
So we're
it comes down
actually
to both.
moving forward, maybe not as fast as Chris would like to, maybe not as, but we are moving forward in getting rid of underperforming teachers. And there's not a lot of us up here.
Can I chime in here? Okay. I agree with what Carla said. We need communication, trust, and respect. That's what this whole evaluation thing is heading toward. I totally commend what Chris has said. The need for courage to admit there are some people in classrooms that do not belong there. And it doesn't matter if we want to teach their left foot or their right foot. We do have people, lots now, but there are people there that historically this country has moved to, probably through the strength of unions protecting people for whatever the reasons in the beginning, well beyond all the protection some people need. This district once had someone who was arrested on a sexual charge, and the union still supported that person in a hearing because that's their job. And it takes the teachers in the union to stand up and say, wait a minute, you're not leading us in the way we want to be led. Because if you're teacher B and you get kids from teacher A every year who are not prepared, you can't necessarily get them where they need to be. They're not in the mood to love school and love learning. And so I believe you put kids in front of teachers. That's what education's about. Kids first. And I love that we're doing this evaluation thing. I love it. I think it's the best thing we've done in a long time. But we need strong superintendents like Mitch to scream and yell at principals who don't evaluate properly. We need Mark, who gave the course 2 years ago that I saw, on how to properly evaluate. Then we need to hold feet to the fire. And then we need a board to stand behind it and admit when Chris is saying the right thing. And not say, we've invested money. I'm sorry. It's not the money we've invested in the teachers. It's some people know every single thing about curriculum. They really do. And they can say it. But when they get in the classroom, they don't have the magic. And that's sad. But someone has to honestly look them in the face and better their peers and their union than everybody else and say, I love you. You are the nicest person. You put in more hours than everybody else in the world. You remember every child on their birthday and give them their favorite candy bar. But learning isn't going on in this classroom. This isn't a place where parents want to put their children. And do parents sometimes misjudge the good teachers and the bad? Absolutely, but not the furthest extremes. Usually not the furthest extremes. And you know what? I've had kids in teachers' rooms who people thought were awful, and for my kid, they actually did work like you. But we're looking at 30 kids in the classroom, and maybe my child wouldn't get as much success with a different teacher, but what's going to happen to the other 29? We have numbers, we have students. I love our teachers. I love our teachers. But I don't want to see technicalities costing us 3 years and tons of money when a teacher should be gone. When a teacher should be gone. There are very few teachers like that. But when it happens, I'd love to see all the teachers in our district wear the black armbands and come in here and say, we support the board that there is a teacher that needs to be gone. And we support children. And the idea that every teacher in our district is perfect is just beyond me. It's just beyond me because there's no perfect profession. There are no perfect board members. There are no perfect superintendents or attorneys or secretaries. We're just people. And sometimes we get ourselves in the wrong career. And let someone tell us. I had a third grade teacher who told me not to sing with my class because I got such a bad voice, just mouth the words. Thank goodness I'd never applied for choir again. I mean, it was an honest thing and I should put my energies where they belong. And so I really commend the leadership that Carla is offering us and whoever is also part of that whole group on the teacher side. I think that right now the vortexes of the world are coming together to say we need to do something different and something better. Our teachers union is doing better. Our superintendent is really doing better. Our Mark is doing better. Janet's doing better. Our board is having this discussion. That's better. And that's what we need to do. And our parents should be happy to know that we are honest enough on camera not to hide under the desk and not say the truth. And the truth is, if I give you communication, trust, and respect, I have to tell you what I think. And what I think is, it's not a perfect world. And anyone who knows me personally knows I want a perfect world for all of our students. I want that beyond anything in the world, and that's why I sit at this table. I want the best for every kid. Am I different than any of you? There is no person in this room who wants anything different than I want. That's why you spent all the hours sitting here. Every one of you wants the same thing. And where you come from in your beginning of your philosophy is no different. And I bet if I gave a secret ballot to this room, it would be unanimous that teachers who don't belong in a classroom shouldn't be there. I just believe that, because we're all there together. So.
I would agree. I think everybody.
Well, so sort of crying. It was awesome. Other than what you do about it, I was at an event. I won't even say what the event was because I went to a finite number of this type of event. But I was at an event at one of our schools with a high-ranking person, and we walked past a classroom, the teacher doing their job, sitting at their desk, be really careful here, and this high-ranking person said to me, "See that teacher? Yeah, that's all that teacher ever does." Point being, just sit at their chair and expound that their energy, that this person doesn't work hard any longer, is doing the bare minimum. This is what this high-ranking person told me, and the essentially acknowledge that this teacher shouldn't be teaching.
But then shouldn't that be the job of a principal? To identify that teacher and either offer them some solutions to doing a better job other than what they're doing, or deciding it's time to move on.
Or the legislature to give us laws to allow us to remove that teacher.
If that teacher doesn't know, I mean,
How
what
are
if that
we
teacher thinks
helping
they're
them?
effective?
How is our policy, or policy that you advocated for, helping that principal to actually get that teacher out of their classroom quickly?
It's the pressure that we're putting on the
But
superintendent.
shouldn't the principal then go in there to that person and evaluate them and say,
Wait a minute.
shouldn't they have something on their
Well, wait a
file
minute.
saying,
I
sit
know
down on
principals. I know principals who have evaluated the heck out of people, and the only way they can get that teacher out of their school in less than 2 years is to put. This is what happens in our schools. Now, hopefully, the new method's going to improve this, but it has been traditional in this district that the way a principal gets a really poor performing teacher out of their school is to put them under enough pressure that they request transfer.
That's how it has worked. And it would be monumentally stupid of a principal to engage in this 3-year tracking process that A, they're probably going to lose. Because in order to do that, they need to decide to own that teacher for an extended period of time. They need to decide to give up their ability to get that teacher out of Johnny and Sally and Susie's face.
And I do understand what you're saying.
So they're basically taking Johnny, Susie, and Billy and going, I'm going to smack you, and you, and you. Because the right thing, I think it's worth smacking you on the head to have a 1 in 20 that this district actually can terminate this teacher. When the fact of the matter is, they know that teacher's not going to be fired. They're not.
And there are issues.
If they do the bare minimum, they're not gonna be fired.
How is
Unless
ranking
their
teachers?
peers come up and unite,
Which-
and
which-
unless
right,
the
which-
legislature
well,
gives
and I-
us some power, and so that's,
And the
those
peers
are,
thing, you know,
those are the things. The
people will
laws
do what they
and
will
the
do, but
peers.
I have to say out loud, I respect all good,
I respect all teachers. Well,
Wait a minute, Chris.
Yeah.
And peers don't even know necessarily who's the poor teacher, because usually, before
Yeah, they do.
PLCs,
yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah,
before
yes.
PLCs, you could close your door.
You know, every teacher that I've ever asked, and I've asked dozens, and I've never thrown one under the bus, but any teacher you get alone, I mean, you get different answers, but name the worst teacher you've ever known, name the worst teacher in your school, name 3 worst teachers you've ever worked with. I mean, sometimes you always get a lot of, most of them are really good. Yeah, if you could get rid of any one of them right now and get them another job in a different business, do you know who it would be? All of them.
So can teachers then take control of their union and say,
no, they won't. They won't.
we'll see it,
And I'll tell you the problem.
has a responsibility?
Here's the problem.
I don't know.
Here's the problem. You got teachers that go into teaching for love of teaching. And I would say that's most of them. And unfortunately, because some teachers, and I hope the teachers that are here like this, some teachers deserve $200,000 a year. Some of them deserve $200,000 a year, for sure. And it's a crime that we can't give it to them. But so people that are money motivated, and I don't buy that the only good teachers are the ones that would do it at any price. I think those are some of the best teachers. I think there are some teachers that say, I want to make $200,000 a year. And they'd be a phenomenal teacher, but can't make $200,000 a year, go be a stockbroker. But that doesn't mean they wouldn't be a great teacher. We miss out on the whole side of the human population in America in the teaching business that's money motivated. Because we offer 0 opportunity to get ahead as a teacher, other than getting out of teaching. And not out of education, but out of being a day-to-day classroom. Mitch might be the pearl, and by the way, I said this the other day, I mean, I suspect he could go school, so to speak, a great majority of our teachers. We got a teacher's teacher as a super. But he could, I don't know what the max teacher in this district is, $1.16, $1.10, $1.05, I don't know. But it is what he makes. So we end up with a lot of very lovely people that do a lot of great work, but they clearly, the culture in public education is one of don't throw your coworkers ever under the bus. And boy, it could be you. And that's why, even sexual harassment, that's why, and I'm trying to not point at people, I apologize. That's why a teacher that absolutely cheated on standardized tests, and everyone knows it, and the union backed that person.
So, I just want to say, all that being said, I don't want to rank teachers. I want us to be more responsible, all of us. I want our board, our superintendent, Mark, all of our principals, our teachers, because you know that story about the starfish, and you throw one back and you make a difference. This district can make a difference by standing up and saying, we are so responsible. We believe in respect, communication, and trust, And we are going to trust each other and make sure that only the capable teachers are teaching our students, because kids come before any sort of a protective system that we hold hands and we make a circle around people, because that's the rule of our union or our law, because together we can make a difference. We can make it happen, and not in a mean way, because again, I don't think any of these people are evil people.
I don't think any of them are evil
they're good
either.
people.
I don't think any of them are evil either. And I am certain that we have a number of poor performing teachers who are wonderful people and probably immensely talented in other areas. And it's just an unfortunate reality that some people aren't good at their career choice. But you know what? I'm sorry. Kids and taxpayers, quite frankly, come before our employees. I respect our employees. I want our employees to make a good living and have a good lifestyle. But the taxpayers do not charge us for the purpose of employing people. They charge us with the purpose of educating children. And it makes sense to do a good job as an employer to make that happen. But kids come before, they certainly come before teachers that can't cut it.
I agree with you. I think you don't have a second chance to make an impact on children, and that our teachers definitely need to be held accountable. I truly don't think ranking teachers is going to get that. I think you can get further by going the path that we're going, being able to evaluate our teachers. I also charge the superintendent to make his principals more accountable. And there should be no dance of, I didn't want to say it, but transferring of teachers. That practice, I believe, has stopped, although there have been some that have fallen through the cracks. And I think that is unacceptable for a principal. And I understand why they would do it, because they're looking out for their school, but they're looking out for their school at the risk of other children. And if you can start a process here and keep that teacher and make it happen, because what happens is that person doesn't rank them the right way, then they go to another school and they have to start over. And then it takes 3 to 5 years, because these principals are not laying the law and making people accountable and trying to help them get better or move them out.
Well, I think they are trying to help them get better. I think we need to look in the mirror on that. We're the criminal. We're the criminal. Because to ask a principal to be disciplined with their children's lives, you don't pay, I don't pay, that principal doesn't pay, the children in that classroom pay. If that's the only method that we have to get a child out of the classroom, then we need to buck up and figure out where to find the money to put that teacher into a co-teacher role and get a good teacher in that classroom to be in charge and the bad one to be not in charge.
And maybe that's what we look at, as some other kind of, I mean, I don't think we can do anything with ranking teachers and firing them right now without legislative support.
I want the principals of this district to know, if the only way for you to get a teacher out of your children's faces that shouldn't be in their faces quickly is to push them into another school, I've got your back. I got your back. I back you 110%. Because you didn't create that situation. I did, the legislature did. Your job is to protect the children under your watch. Your job is not to use children as skid marks in the name of a screwed up system.
Chris, you made one error in your thinking, okay? That principal's job may be for that school, School X, but you, sitting on this board, your job is for the 13,680 kids
And you
in
know
our
what I'll do?
district.
I'll cut salaries and do whatever I
No, but what I'm
do
saying
to
is
get
when that
2 teachers
principal-
in that classroom.
When that principal transfers out a teacher and gives it to another place, you're not protecting those students, those 30 students.
I want to fire that person. And I would politically, I would challenge you to think about the politics and strategy of what you are saying what we're doing now will work better. I guess it's possible that what we're working on is the finest evaluation system in the history of America, and I hope that it is.
No, I said it had to be combined.
But my point is, this whole, Mark said, this system will not identify the bottom. That is not its mission. Its mission is to evaluate and improve and point out that his son can cut right better or whatever. It's designed to improve. We are not doing anything practically or politically to make clear to the voters of Fullerton, California, or this nation that there is a bottom torturing our children. This system won't help do that.
There's a bottom.
I'm not, by the way, I support the system.
Any workforce there's a bottom.
I'm not proposing that we rank instead of using your system at all. I think, to the extent that it's a good system, I think it's the right idea.
So you just want staff to understand and identify who the bottom performing teachers are and make sure that there is something on file.
I am a values-driven political animal that is not in it for myself. People can laugh if they want, but let me tell you, nothing I did at this board table tonight is going to help me get elected to anything higher than this office, and I'm aware of it. My mission is to do what I think is most important for the taxpayer, for the future of our children, and how public education is failing today. And I believe that the single biggest problem, number one, is our inability to get rid of the bottom. I think it's a bigger problem than not being able to reward the best, which I think is a big problem. But I think that's the biggest crime of the NEA and the CTA, and I consider it a moral crime that they've advocated for laws that have put us in this position. And I don't think we'll be able to do anything with that, but I would imagine that it would be news that a district ranked their bottom for the purpose of just simply saying, people, we can't do much about it. We're going to try to train and do all these legal things, but if we can do it legally, if we can't, we can't. If we can do it legally, to just say, this district wants you to know that we know there's a bottom. And we can't tell you who it is, so we can't. But we know, and we've thought about it, and we went to the work of going as far as we can go, which is just simply to say there is one and we've identified it. And please do us the favor, voters, of voting for legislators that'll do something about it, to let us do something.
I have a question for them. Do you know who your bottom performers are?
Every principal evaluates all teachers. And I know that the principals know who their strong teachers are, and I know that principals know who the ones are.
So how's that different from what you're saying? They know who they are.
Because we don't know who our word, we are not telling the people that we have.
So
we
should we
don't
know
know.
the statement says we know who they are?
Well, okay, here's the answer to that question. Could you and Mark on Monday morning walk into the office and within 20 minutes, even if it's illegal to do, could you have that list of our worst 10% from you within a day?
I would not put together a list, but
I know you would. Could you?
But we can tell you who the teachers are that need to be given extra support in order to be successful. And we do know those that if they're not successful, that we're working on through the evaluation
That's not
process.
really the answer to my question. It's close. Could you identify the worst 10%?
10%, no.
Could you identify the worst 5%?
I can identify those teachers based upon the evaluation process and working with the principals.
Let me try
they
to
know
what
who their
percent
bottom-
of the teachers is that?
Don't know, because I don't put it in terms of numbers.
They don't know.
I don't believe you can put it in terms of numbers.
But they're not going to write them down.
Well, okay, but that, based on what I'm hearing now, that could be, I don't know what percentage it is.
We do know those whom we're working with.
Do you know who the worst teacher
That's why we
is?
have, that's why we have a PARC program for those teachers with whom we're working with.
I don't know if you can identify words.
This is why, that is, what he just said is of no value in political.
Not to you, but to us, because we know
How
how.
do private organizations do it?
Because they have a different, I think it's very hard. You think you can easily come in here and identify what a good and bad teacher is?
No, I think it's really hard.
It is really
I
hard.
think it's really hard.
Whereas in an organization, you have different kinds of measures in some instances. You've got widgets you can build.
Wait. Sales is a real artsy thing. It's a real artsy thing. and organizations frequently have to do
But you're
things.
gonna compare different sales with different sales.
You've
You're
got
gonna compare apples
different,
to
you've got, they
oranges.
sell different products, they're in different territories, they've got different customers that were given to them, that give them huge numbers that they didn't land themselves. You've got guys with worse numbers that are better. You've got all of the components. You've got all of the components that you have. You have demographics, you have what they were given with, you have different circumstances, yet they have to do things like call, or just have a philosophy of, GE had a philosophy of, every year we're going to try to dump 10% of our sales force.
But they had parameters that would determine who would be dumped, what would be the criteria. And so without those parameters, how do you say who the bottom 10% is?
Where do you think they got the parameters?
From management.
How do
And
you think they did that?
they set goals. And it's kind of the same kind of concept like we're talking about. Sure, if you're in sales, the concept is that you're going to either grow your territory by X amount or do this or do that. Many times a salesman is hired for 18 months on a minimum salary, and if you don't meet your goal, you're not going to get paid anymore. You're getting paid diddly after that, and most of them see the handwriting on the wall and leave because they're very money driven. So their
Well,
salary is contingent on how well they
There
perform.
are many circumstances where people determine that certain numbers look better for certain people, yet other people are better. I mean, look, it's hard. And by the way, you're going to be wrong. You're going to be wrong. I mean, doing hard, painful things causes,
That's
if
true.
you
That's
fired
true.
60
Some
people, if you had a goal of firing your bottom 10% and you fired 60 people, for sure, you'd fire some people that shouldn't have been fired. I don't know if it would be 1, 2, 5, or 6. Somebody that should have been 2 or 3 above, that should have made the cut under a better system, are going to get lost. But you know what? That's life in the big city, folks. Kids come first. Kids come first. People are looking at me and shaking their heads like I'm such a mean guy. I'm not the one that's protecting bad teachers staying in the classroom. The ones that don't support this are the ones throwing kids under the bus to protect bad teachers
But
in
if
the
you
classroom.
support the concept that it's okay for a principal, you'll protect their back if they transfer a teacher,
Because
then you are
they're-
throwing kids.
No, because I created the rules of the game. They didn't. I created the rules of the game. You give a teacher, you give a principal, these are your kids, this is your school, you're held accountable for your scores, you're held accountable for culture, you're held accountable for esprit de corps.
I'm held accountable for the
what is-
district though, for the entire district.
Well, okay,
Every
but
13,000.
if I create a stupid set of rules, and that person does great under the stupid set of rules that I created, I'm holding me accountable. I'm not holding that person accountable. Look, I'm sure we got some.
That's what I'm holding you accountable too.
Oh, this is why you think I'm enjoying this? You think I like coming here and arguing with everybody every Tuesday, every other Tuesday? I hate it. I hate it. I'd rather go have a glass of wine at Twisted Vine and have a good time and go to all the fundraisers and be nice and talk about all the fun things that we do. But I can't rest knowing that we are covering for bad teachers in the classroom. Look, and I don't even know, I have personal deep knowledge of what? That's, pretty please, classroom, tomorrow morning. Pretty please. And I ain't got no hope getting rid of that person.
Oh, there's always hope.
So, anyway, I appreciate your second, or your second on this, it was your second. And I'm not gonna make a motion, it's pointless. And I agree with you that it's valuable to talk about this, and I sure would implore to the extent that any teacher is ever gonna hear this, if they care. It's very, I'll be honest, I respect teachers, I don't respect our union. I do not have respect for our union. I do not have respect for the CTA. I disrespect the CTA. I disrespect the NEA. I respect some of the leaders of our union. I like all of them that I know. But the performance and choices of our union and the CTA and above hurts kids. They wantonly hurt children. And I'm sick of it. And their values are my enemy. And ENEMY, they are my enemy. Not the teachers, but the union. And, so I am here for the fight. That's why I'm sitting here doing this, because I don't think we're going far enough to protect children and make children and make, I am so, every time when we're campaigning and I hear it's all about the kids, I want to throw up. I want to throw up, because every day boards all across America throw children under the bus to protect the worst, and that's all the union protects. The best don't need the union. The best would be making more, having more job security, more renown, more money, more flexibility. The best don't need the union. Only the bottom. And the top are patsies of the bottom.
Do you feel strongly about this?
It's so upsetting to me. I mean, it's just,
It's upsetting.
it's
I
heartbreaking.
understand that.
It's heartbreaking.
Well, the heartbreaking is that the system is not putting the children first. It is not putting the kids first.
That's right.
And, that is heartbreaking. That, I don't need to tease you.
No, look, I'm not I wish I were better. I wish I were. I wish I were more statesmanlike. I wish I had an ability to send this message in a way that sent everybody home thinking. And I know my vitriol and my anger and my intensity makes people sit there and want to figure out why I'm wrong. I know that. I know it's a weakness of mine. But I also know this. No one else runs for office that says these things. No. You come close. And I don't mean to be negative toward anybody else, but I pray to God that kinder, calmer, smarter, more effective people than I that share these values run. I will step down tomorrow. I would step down tomorrow to make room for those. But they're not. I'm not here. When I send out an email to candidates for representatives of the California School Boards Association and ask them a couple of basic questions as litmus tests as to what I believe is wrong with public education, and none of the 14 candidates for 11 positions even answers the email. I got my answer. They're all sellouts.
Or they just don't want to answer you.
Yeah, maybe they were busy that day.
Well, I think that people, I sit up here and think twice about what I'm going to say, because you are a good debater.
Yeah.
And if I'm
No,
not
I'm
ready to
actually
go
not.
at it,
I go home from the psych session, but I go home upset. I like all you guys. I like when we, go to things and talk, and, with Hilda and I had a great conversation, and I wish I knew how to do this without getting so upset. It's just so upsetting to me. It's upsetting to me that I know we're not going to fire our worst teachers. And we're not going to send, you guys don't think this way. I do. I blog. Tony Bouchal is my buddy. We do things to shake things up so we can try to change things. But it would be huge. It would be huge for this district to do this if we could pull it off legally. I don't know if we could, but if we could pull it off legally without putting the list out, to embarrass those teachers, because that's not my goal. It would get national attention. It would start a national dialogue on the issue. It would put the feet of the legislators to the fire. And I know good teachers would love it if after 3 or 4 years of, oh my God, they can fire me. They're not going to fire me. I'm very good. Now I get to go to work knowing I'm here because I'm good. How great of a feeling is that? I don't even know what it's like to work in a job where, if you show up and dot the I and cross the T, you can suck, and you won't be fired. I don't know what that's like. It can't be a very uplifting feeling. It can't.
So we are not going to rank teachers, is the bottom line.
I'm not even. I truly,
I'm just.
I appreciate this whole meeting, you know, you guys let me, I know what, but we talked about so many things that I wanted to talk about, you know, and they've been talked about, and, you know, and I appreciate it.
Well, and you're not alone on some of that
I
stuff.
understand.
It's just you're a little bit more vocal than some of us might be.
Are we done? I don't want to be accused of not allowing anybody to complete their discussion on the topic. Hearing no more, we're adjourned. Thank you all for joining.